All right, welcome to the second episode of Three Tired Dads. Yes, that's right. We finally came up with a name for the show other than Video
Yay!
Game Club because, as it turns out, that was taken. So
I'm shocked.
we decided just to describe ourselves, and we are indeed. Well, two tired dads and one tired and somewhat
One will be
worried
tired,
Be
Dad.
soon to be dad.
take care of the a smaller vessel. That's
Yes.
fine.
Yeah.
Vessel light.
Vessel.
Vessel
Vesselite just still sounds like
vase.
cellulite to me.
But
I think you mean celluloid.
So, yes, film, yes. But
I
welcome,
called them
welcome.
parasites, but apparently that's frowned upon.
Yeah, I mean they
Mm.
are though. It's just a fact. It's just a fact. So this is the
Anyway,
second episode. So what we do here at Three Tired Dads is, for the most part, we play a video game and then we talk about it, sort of like a club for video games, but instead we're just three tired dads talking about them. I am Sharks.
I'm Phenom.
and I am Spleen.
Hey, look, we got better at that.
This no awkward silences.
No awkward silences this time. This is great. All right, guys. It's been about a month, a little over a month since we did the first episode. What's been up? What's been going on?
I'm gonna let you guys go
Oh,
first. My life has been something.
I mean, you only had a few things happen. Well,
Just a couple.
let's see. What we didn't say in the last one is I have a job again, so that's fun.
Yay!
That's right. Congrats.
Yeah. But I think other than that, I finally picked up Spider-Man 2
Mm.
and ended up beating it pretty quick. A little
Is that
bummed about
the
that.
Miles Morales one? Or is that the
No,
DLC?
that it is the sequel, and it has both of them.
Oh, okay.
Miles Morales was kind of like a 1.5,
Okay.
to kind of like bridge the gap between 1 and 2. Um, it was fun, really good story, but it was short. It only took me like 20 hours to beat.
20 hours and isn't that a big game?
Yeah,
Supposed
it's
to
a pretty
be?
big one. There was quite a bit. I mean, the story was good, so maybe I just kind of. But I also did most of the side stuff. I can't tell if I think they may have just not put as much in like with the first one because I felt like there was a lot more side stuff to do to distract in that one.
Mm-hmm.
But it was still a lot of fun. The Miles powers are really cool. They introduced Venom. They uh yeah, really fun. Just wish it was longer.
And what'd you play that on?
PlayStation.
PlayStation 5. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, things have been busy too. Got through the holidays, all that went well.
Mm.
Feel good
Hmm.
about it. But other than playing the game we're going to talk about today, and I know you guys both saw this, there's a game called OutBrk, which I have been waiting to pick up for a while. I heard about it when it first got announced, and what it is a storm chasing video game.
Mm.
So I've caught me being a severe weather enthusiast and sometimes storm chaser. I've been definitely keeping my eye on it. It dropped in price, for a special. So I went ahead and picked it up, and I do not regret it. It is like exactly the kind of game that I want it to be. It's still pretty bare bones, I'll say, but you get dropped into their map, which is actually pretty good size map. And they call it you're dropped in at initiation. So the thunderstorms are just starting to fire. You have to look at the map and you have to decide which thunderstorm you're going to target, and hope that you get the one that has the tornado in it. You get money for taking pictures of wall clouds and funnel clouds and tornadoes. When you're playing with other people, you can actually report what you're seeing, and so that way other players know where you spotted the tornado or the wall cloud or whatever. And then you can actually put probes down in front of tornadoes, and the better the data you collect, the more money you get if you're able to successfully get the probe back. And so it does incentivize you to get really close and in the path of tornadoes to try and get as many points as possible.
Do a lot of probing.
We do a lot of probing. Yeah, I don't think there's a limit on the amount of probing that you get to do
Mm.
in a
Excellent.
gameplay session. My strongest tornado so far that I've captured data on is a EF4. Waiting for that EF5, but it's honestly it's still in early access, and so it's kind of like Phasmophobia but storm chasing, except it's still when we first started playing Phasmophobia, it feels more like that, where it's really bare bones and it's fun, and you can see where they're going with it. It just needs to continue to have work done on it, but I've
It has
really
good
enjoyed
bones.
it. It really does. I've really enjoyed my time with it, and I can't wait until they flesh out the multiplayer a bit more, because I would love to have one of you guys, or both of you even, in the car with me, and the three of us work together to try and chase tornadoes. I think it's gonna be a blast. But
And
that's what I've
much
been doing.
safer than your PT Cruiser.
Well, there's
Sometimes I've
Uh,
died twice in game. Um, the first time I thought the tornado was gone, and so I was like, oh, let me look at my map and see when it's going to reform. I think it went away. And
What's
so
that sound?
I'm looking at my map, and when I come out of my map, I'm like 60 feet in the air, and I came crashing to the earth and died. And then yesterday, I think I was like, oh, I'll play a session real quick, and there was a big tornado, and I got in front of it once, successfully got a probe in front of it, and then I hopped back in front of it and thought I had enough time to put another probe down, but I got back in my truck and it sucked me into the tornado and tossed me in the air and killed me.
The whole truck or just,
Oh, the whole truck, yeah.
oh man.
Oh yeah. So I mean, you don't get penalized for dying. You just don't get any earnings from that run. So, but it's
Nice.
really good, honestly. I'm very impressed with it's because you can look at the weather radar and it actually has the basics, because you have just the Doppler or just like the vorticity radar where you can see the actual storm velocities, but you also have like the breakdowns of wind direction at all the different levels. So if you know more about how to read all of that stuff, it's much easier for those players to be able to get to the right storm. And so I feel good with the knowledge that I have. But they use actual storm data from like real life storms that have happened, and that's the storms you're seeing in the game. It's really cool. It's really
Oh,
cool.
cool. So it's simulated based off of
Real life.
real life. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. I mean, it looks legit. So I'm looking forward to it getting
the
fleshed
game
out a
loop
bit, and then
game loop
inviting you
like?
guys to join me.
Yeah, what's the game loop like? Because, like, Phas, you end when you think you've caught the ghost and you think you know what kind of ghost it is. You get in the truck, you leave, go back to the headquarters, etc. What does that loop look like for something like that?
So right now, I would say it plays out more like what an actual storm chaser would experience, which is you get dropped in and then you play with those storms as long as you want or until the storms leave the map. And so
Okay.
Mm.
the only way to leave safely is to stop at a gas station. And then at any point during the run, you can stop at a gas station and go, I've got enough data or I've got enough pictures or whatever, and you can leave safely and get the full amount of money.
Okay.
There have been a couple times that I've dropped in and I've looked at the radar and I'm like, I would have to drive so far, and this does not look like a promising setup for the kind of storm I want to see, and I'll just immediately leave the game with no penalty.
Okay.
And other times, I've literally started at the southwest corner of the map, and I have followed the storms all the way until they leave the northeast corner of the map, because there was
Wow.
just so much. We're talking, I've spent an hour plus because I could. You don't have to. It's just how long you want to be on the
So does
map
it kind of
chasing them.
act a little more real time? Probably still a little sped up for it to be a game, but
It's basically, I would say, 100% real time.
oh wow.
You get a
Cool.
radar update every 60 seconds, and the storms are constantly moving and developing and changing. And so sometimes you're driving to the location and stopping every minute to check on the. You're always checking on that radar loop, though. You're always checking on
Mhm.
the radar refresh. And then once you have the tornado in your sight, you're constantly having to look at the map and go, okay, how can I reroute myself to safely get in front of this thing or safely follow it? While avoiding like hail. Like hail is a huge part of this. Like the more beat up your car gets from crashing into things or hail damage, like windshield damage, you can actually see, the less money you make at the end. You have to gas up the car. Like you have to keep the car gassed up. You have to pay for the gas, and that takes away from your final score as well.
Wait, so you have to actually like park at a gas station and fill
So
up
this
You
your
is
do,
gasoline
this is
or
yeah.
like
neat.
full on. It's
It's
a
a full-on
simulator.
sim.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a full on sim.
It is a
That's cool.
full on. It really is. Like I kind of want, as they develop it, I want this game mode to stay in because it feels like real storm chasing. But I think for people that are both new to storm chasing and who are looking for a faster experience, I'd love to see like a scenario system where it's a slightly smaller map and it either teaches you or challenges you to get different things or get with a certain range or whatever.
Even
I
like a
think
career mode of some sort.
I would love to have a career mode. I was thinking about that the other day. But it's just a true simulation. Like if you crash into something, you can die. If you run off into the grass, your car can't drive quickly, or you can get stuck. All of the stoplights in game work. When there is a tornado warning on a town, the sirens go off.
Sweet.
Ooh.
Yeah, stuff like that. And so it's when the tornado hits objects, it destroys them. Like, and it's still pretty basic, but watching a tornado start to throw trees in the air is still cool. So I think it's amazing. I can't wait to see what they do with it. It was a really good. I'm happy to give them, the $25 to support them since they're a small developer, and I'm hoping it continues so I can invite you guys to play with me.
This feels like one of those games that where you want to get an actual steering wheel, a VR headset, and you're literally just doing that. Because that honestly, it sounds fun.
What I really want, and I kept thinking about this because it's such a good simulation because in order to be driving, to look at my radar screen, I can't look at where I'm driving. And so I'm having to constantly go back and forth. And I was like, it would be so cool to have like, Spleen driving the car, me in the
That's a
passenger
poor
seat
choice.
looking at the radar and telling him where to go, and Fen in the back seat taking pictures or doing video or reporting things. Like that would be fun.
Yeah.
So it's good. It's really good.
Sweet.
So that things have been going well. So let's change the tune over to Fen. I haven't heard about the journeys with the new house.
Yeah. Okay. So last time we recorded, I was still in my current house, which was in Houston. And then Sharks helped me move back to Wimfield, which thank you again.
Yeah.
Which was an experience because the Packers took what 4 hours to pack a truck for a 3-bedroom house.
Oh my god, it
was
took
painful.
so long, man.
And then he drove the truck, and then when I drove it later, that thing had the worst no suspension at all.
Oh my god.
And it was the bumpiest ride. Oh, it was so awful.
I don't know how I
drove it
didn't
at
lose
70.
teeth, man.
Yeah, dude,
Whoa.
absolutely. I would have paid for the dental work if need be. Holy cow, was it bad? So we got here and started unloading it. Initially, so we had a 26-foot long truck, and I remember going into the house before moving in so I could look at the house, look at the street, kind of get ready because it's a big truck, small town. So try to park it somewhere, and it's my in-laws' house. And I went into the house. The stove was not hooked up, no hot water. The kitchen sink was not working. There was trash and tools and stuff just everywhere.
Goodness.
They were still fixing the sewer in the basement. Yeah, and there was no fence, or part of the fence was down in the backyard, so we can just let our dog out. And so I'm like, okay, well, this is not good already. And I was thinking I was just gonna like essentially parallel park the truck on the side of the road, and we'll just go from there. But my father-in-law insisted that I backed up the truck to the porch so I can get the ramp out onto the porch so we could just get stuff into the house. You're wrong, makes sense. But I looked at it. When you look at it, the driveway that goes up is on the right side of the house. There's a tree to the left in the middle of the yard, right in front of the porch. And I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do that. So I just had no intentions to do it. I get there, and he's like, no, 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 pull over here and back up. What he wanted me to do is go over to the neighbor's side of the yard on the left and do a 45-degree angle back up to the porch across their driveway. And I'm like, okay, you get to deal with the neighbors, man. I will do this. That's fine. And so I ended up doing that, and for about 10 minutes I was stuck on the curb because they had to cut branches down so I could keep backing up. They didn't quite get all of them, so they're just scraping across the side of the U-Haul as I'm backing up, and I'm like, oh, okay. We did manage to make it work. I did actually get the ramp onto the porch. I was already nervous to drive the friggin' thing, and then I had to do that. So then we unloaded everything, all that we could into the house because it's a much smaller house. And then we got back to storage. I forgot the lock, so we got everything into storage. I came back later to put the lock on, and when I put the lock on, it wouldn't fit. I got too big of a lock. I'm like, oh, come on. So my stupid self was like, I could just kind of wedge it this way and do this, and I accidentally locked it, wedged in place where I couldn't get the key in. And I sat there for probably 20 minutes trying to get the key in, and I'm scraping up the paint. And I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna have to cut the thing open, and I got to contact because they have cameras. So I get in my car, I head back to the house, frustrated, and I get there and I walk in and I'm starting to kind of help organize because the house is just filled with stuff. And I get an immediate call from my essentially my brother-in-law, and he's like, "Hey, so your dog Bailey got out of our backyard," and I'm like, "Oh." And luckily, they only live 3 blocks away from us. Like, they're literally just down the street. So I just get out of the house and start running. And he's like, yeah, she's in the middle of the street. And sure enough, she is in the middle of the street between the neighbors and him. And they're trying to get her, but she just doesn't know what to do.
Sure.
So I had
What
to
are we
get
doing,
her.
guys?
Apparently, she had chewed her way through the fence to get out, and had been out for a while. And the neighbors have been trying to corral her to help her. So that was most of my day for that. And since then, we have gotten the fence up. We have gotten the hot water working. We've gotten all of the amenities over time finally set up. But they had to buy a brand new water heater because it wasn't working. The sink wasn't draining for a while, and so we finally figured that out. We got the fence up as it got cold and just about snowed, which is it was awful. So yeah, that's like the summary of it, and this is also a considerably smaller house. And also we had a feral cat get into our basement.
Nice.
Did it get the snake?
No idea where the snake's at.
There's
that's
a snake.
good point.
Cool.
When I went outside the backyard, there was a snake skin, probably 3-4 feet long. And I was just like, well, that's concerning.
But do you see any mice?
No, there are no mice, but the snakeskin was originally inside of the house, under the stairs going to the basement, which I was like, huh.
Check
I don't
your
like
toilets.
that. Yeah, I've been worried about going to the bathroom at night. But the feral cat got in, and initially I went down. I didn't know it was there. I went down the stairs, turned
Was
the
it
corner.
aggressive or just?
It and I made eye contact. And then we both just sprinted away from each other. Like, I sprinted up the stairs. I'm like,
I thought it was gonna be like a. Do you hear boss music?
Okay, where's their health bar? Where's their health
It was a
bar?
big cat too. Like, oh my god, it was a big cat. Well, the
What are you
reason
doing
I
in
was
my
also
house?
extra nervous is because literally days before there was another cat, completely different cat. I was asleep in bed, and my wife wakes up before me, and I knew she had took the dog outside, and all of a sudden, and dead asleep, I hear screaming outside, and I'm like, what is happening? So I sprint, sweatpants on, no shoes, into 30-degree weather, no shirt. Don't know what's going on, and to get to the backyard, you have to go down about 2 steps. My father-in-law has all of his tools, so I have about a foot wide space to shuffle down. So I'm still waking up, hoping I don't fall down the stairs. Open it up, and Kaylin at that point, she had already kind of calmed down, and I'm like, "What is happening?" Apparently, there was a cat in waiting for both my wife and the dog, and then tried to attack both my wife and the dog. And I learned that a pregnant wife is not fun to deal with because she started kicking the cat. So that's part of the reason I was so nervous, because I'm like, I don't want to get clawed, and this town has a problem with cats so bad. So we ended up catching it, and my father-in-law's kennel is it's handmade, so it's rusty and not great, but we did catch it, and I had every intention to take it to Humane Society or also get the animal handler out. couldn't get a hold of the animal handler. And the Humane Society was not open on the weekends. So the poor thing had to stay down there for about 2 days, and still couldn't get it. I had to take it into Humane Society myself, which was not pleasant because when I went down to check on it to give it some food, because I was like, it's still here, it's probably hungry. It saw me and sprinted into the front of the cage about 3 times with its forehead as hard as it could.
Like trying to run away.
Trying to run away, and then it would claw and get up on the top of the kennel. And it was like a demon cat trying to just go around and hissing at me and doing all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, I I feel awful because then it looked at me and it had like blood, and I'm like, oh, this poor thing. I finally got to Humane Society. They made us pay $40 for the thing to turn it in, even though we had no idea what it was. That thing was probably like a 20-pound cat. Like it was a big tabby cat. So our experiences of here have been a doozy.
Welcome back.
But
Welcome back.
yeah, apparently, and then snow, which then I forgot snow and ice, and I didn't have an ice scraper, so I used my wife's old ID to scrape off ice.
Gotta do what you gotta do, man.
So it worked.
We've all
Her
been there.
ID is still fine.
Oh yeah.
I have an ice scraper now.
Good.
So yeah, that's been my life.
Well, that's fabulous.
Yeah, but obviously I've been playing Nimrods here and there. Still playing World of Warcraft. Been doing Mythic dungeons, which are super fun. They have I'm rated 1600 or something like that. I'm on Mythic 6.
Nice.
Yeah, that's been fun. I'm like out of level 601. The in-game's really, really fun in the new one. New expansion. So I've been really enjoying that. Haven't played it in about a week or two because I've then started doing a hardcore run in WoW again, which is incredibly nerve-wracking. But I've decided to get add-ons to help myself get through it because I don't want to lose. Like I have 10 hours in that character right now, and I'd rather not die because that sucks. Doesn't feel good. I've had it.
Oh,
you're doing
a permadead.
Yeah.
That's
although
too much pressure for me.
Good for you.
it's a lot. It's a lot.
And then you've been playing Path of Exile too.
Then Path of Exile 2, which has been
I want to get it.
it's been initially fun, and it still is fun, but it's so punishing. It's so like Elden Ring is less punishing than this. And one of my frustrations is so you can use basically any weapon in the game, which is cool. Not all the weapons are out right now because it's still early access, but you can use most of the weapons, right? You need certain strength and intelligence or dexterity levels to be able to get that. That I'm fine with. You just got to level up your character that way. But they drop skill gems that you can then enchant and put on one of your weapons. But once you put it on a weapon, you can't like reuse it on another weapon. You permanently have, and that's how you unlock the skills for the weapons. And so in the first act they drop very little, very, 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 very little. And so I was like, okay, well, I want to try out. I'm trying out the quarterstaff. Is what they start you with. I'm playing a monk. I'm like, well, let me try a crossbow or a mace or whatever. And I quickly realized that was a mistake because when you initially try a weapon, all you have is literally like, let's say crossbow. You can just shoot. That's it. You have to unlock the abilities with the skill gems, which very rarely drop. And then also once you get the skill gems, if you get a higher level one, you can upgrade your abilities with it. So what I learned is like, okay, you just got to stick with whatever weapon you have and stick with that and get better at it. And I've adjusted to it. The boss fights are fun. They're really hard. They actually have really nice mechanics to them. They're very punishing. They're very difficult. The mobs are actually not a problem for me anymore. That used to be a problem. The bosses are tough, and I love it. Up till I got to the last boss I fought, where I wanted to put my fist through the screen, because they had a thing where you would fight it and hit hard, and monks have to stand still, which drives me nuts.
What?
But it's if you want to do a lot of damage, you have to stand very still, because at least the way I'm currently playing, right? Because you can drop a bell in, you can smack the bell, and it does a ton of damage, but you can't move while it's doing that. So you have to make them tanky. And I'm like, okay. And also like trying to get into skill gems. Yeah, good luck. You're kind of stuck with the build you have at that point,
Right.
which is so annoying.
Question.
And so, yeah.
Is your monk the martial artist monk or a priest monk?
Martial artist.
So that's a good question.
That's weird that they make it have to stand still.
You can
Anyway,
move. There are abilities that you can have to move, but the way my character didn't know about the skill gems, the way it's set up, and the best build for me right now is to use what is called the Tempest Bell, which drops a big old bell in the middle, and then to use something Tempest Flurry, where you can just smack it with electricity
Mm-hmm.
like a whole bunch of
hmm
times.
yeah, you do.
Does a ton of damage, but you can't move. Now, of
Mm.
course, you have a dodge mechanic, which requires no stamina, which is great. There are other abilities that allow me to move, but for the most part, he just has to be tanky. That boss hit hard, and I was like, okay, it's a little annoying, whatever. But it eventually got to a phase at about like it would happen every like 20, like 15% of health or so, where it would just disappear, and then this green fog would start coming out of the middle of a hole in the center of the map, and it would start slowly filling up the area. And if you didn't do something in time, you would die. Well, I couldn't figure out what in the world it wanted me to do. At first, I was like, maybe it wants me to use fire because this boss has a lot of fire. Maybe I have to like explode the gas and it goes away. Okay, maybe I just have to survive the gas. Apparently, after doing some research, because I spent an hour on this, you have to look for an invisible enemy that gives you no marks of where it is or any hint at all. You just have to run around the map until you find it and then dodge the attack that it sends out. And I'm like, that is so stupid. Like, now that I know it, I know the mechanic, I know what I need to look for. But initially, like, I don't know what I'm doing. So that made me want to put my fist to the screen, and my frustration started to really build with the game. Because, and as I've read online, other people are having that issue too, where it's just really, really punishing. Sharks, I think you would enjoy the crap out of it. I really do. And
Dude,
It
like
really
I'm a
makes you
punishing
want to hate
games.
yourself. Hey,
I
Sharks,
love
I
games
think
that
you
make me hate
will.
myself. It's true.
I just like we're like I'm a bit of a masochist when it comes to games. I mean, I'm playing hardcore WoW for the love of God. But it's just it, yeah, I don't know how to explain it other than my character feels underpowered. And I don't know if I'm playing the game the right way, so maybe it is a skill issue initially, but
It
I
almost
just feel
sounds like you.
very locked in.
It almost sounds like you got one of those class setups that's better with a group type.
Potentially, I do think this would be number one. I think it'd be fun with a group.
Yeah.
Number two, I think you're
Yeah,
totally right. It would be
like
way better because AOE, I destroy with AOE damage. Single target, I do like nothing. So frustrating. So at least they have support gems that can modify your abilities. You can at least swap those around between abilities, and you can respec the giant skill tree that exists for the game, which is intimidating. But it is fairly expensive to
I
do.
don't think that even intimidating does justice to the ridiculousness that is the Path of Exile skill trees.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's
that was a point I was gonna make. I saw the skill tree and went, no.
Um,
yeah, it's
I'm
intense.
overwhelmed
Leveling
looking
up's
at that.
easy. And then interestingly, I think I'm doing it right with the armor where you can get a piece and you can keep upgrading that piece early on. Because you'll get like little items that say upgrade a normal to a magic item to a rare item, add modifiers to it. Because all the gear that drops just throughout the game until I get to a boss, it's just not worth picking up. Like it's worse than what I have. There's
it's
no
better
item
to just be
levels.
scrap.
It's exactly until I get to a boss where then something does drop, and I'm like, okay, I might want to try to use that. But it seems like they reward you for upgrading and building your gear over time, is what it seems like. Because there's nothing like level based that I've seen. Now, then again, I could be playing the game really wrong, and there could be somebody that listens to this and is screaming at the screen because I could be an idiot. I mean, I don't know, but it's definitely frustrated me more than Elden Ring. Elden Ring, I at least felt like, okay, I just didn't dodge at the right time. I'm not quite geared enough yet. I need to rethink how I need to really learn the boss's mechanics. None of that. Like the bosses are so much fun in Path of Exile 2. Like so much fun. But it's just really punishing. And there's hardcore modes of this game. And I'm just like, who would do this? Like, ugh. The best memory though is the first boss they introduce you to at the very beginning. I quickly realized I had to dodge roll and get out of the way of things instead of just smashing buttons my way through it. And I was like, okay, that's fun. Like in terms of like a Diablo kind of feel, that was really fun to have because I feel like Diablo 4 after a while I just clicked on things and it died,
Right.
which can be fun in its own right. But anyways,
One
we
of
have
the
another game
points
to
I
talk
was going to
about.
make when we start talking about Nimrods is that I very much recognize that I enjoy the games that I enjoy the most are the ones that, it kind of teaches you how to play, and then you're kind of going along and you're fine, but then you hit that wall when you're like, okay, I'm really struggling, and then I am forced to go back and actually learn the systems in the game in order to overcome that obstacle. I really, really like games that are designed that way. And to me, I mean, look, an invisible enemy that they don't tell you anything about is bullshit, no matter what. But it sounds to me like the game is very much like you can get through for a while, but eventually you're going to have to take a good look at these systems and understand them to get better. And I like that.
And that's what that's why I think you, Mark. Well, sorry, Spleen. I
Yeah,
think
it's
you would
whatever.
We'll
absolutely
bleep it out.
enjoy the game as well. But Sharks, it's highly up your alley. Take a Souls game, put it into like a Diablo-esque game, and you have kind of a marriage of the two.
Right.
Because as I said, it's not it run in and button smash. You actually like have to think about how you're responding to it. Have to get better at the game. Because I made adjustments. I got through that boss. I respect my character a little bit, and it was easier once I understood it all. But yeah, I think you would enjoy it because it is exactly what you just explained. So
And
it is fun, super fun game. But yeah,
I looked at like I follow Iron Pineapple on YouTube, and he was doing a playthrough with his friends of it, and I watched about 20 minutes of that, and it's like, this is a game that definitely looks up my alley, but I think I would get the most out of it playing it with friends. So like playing it
sure.
with you and Spleen and overcoming those obstacles. That it looked like that kind of game.
Yeah.
Obviously, we couldn't play it for this because I'm pretty sure it's over the price limit. But I'm definitely keeping an
You
eye on
never
it.
know. It could
Let's
be
say
on
that.
sale.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on it, but it
I
definitely
mean, I
looks
think
like a
it's
game I'm
eventually going to be
interested in.
free. Is the plan right now? They're just having to pay because
Yeah,
of
I mean,
early access.
technically
Right.
the first one's free.
And
Yeah.
I,
I definitely saw the first one, but I never played it. So I don't
I
think I
remember
did.
hearing a lot about it, mainly the skill tree thing, which exists still.
Right.
The story is very personally lackluster. It's very lackluster. I'm just like, okay, sure. The zones are cool, enemies are cool. That's why it also still gives me very Souls vibes because they're very unique enemies that you don't normally see in a kind of game. Like they clearly worked really hard on the monster design of their characters, which is cool. My favorite boss thus far is at the end of Act One, and at the end of Act One boss, so freaking cool. Such a fun fight, and definitely one where it reminded me of raiding because I had to learn what he's doing, and I got a little bit better each time I did the mechanics. Each time I got a little bit better with it. I could predict a little bit more of what he was going to do. It was fun, super fun. But I could talk about it for a while, but we got a game to talk about.
Sure, sure. And that excites me. Like comparing it to rating automatically excites me. So definitely the right track. However, let's move on. We have a few rules for how we choose games here at Three Tired Dads. Rule number one: the game has to be under $20. Rule number two: we want it to take about 20 hours to beat, and it can't be a AAA title. So it can't be like, an old Witcher game that just happens to be under $20 this time around. We want something that is from a smaller developer. So this time, gosh, I almost forgot. I tried to call you Spleen. Phenom chose Nimrod's Guncraft Survivor for us to play. So Nimrods is a top-down survivum. What do they call it on the website? Survivum roguelite shooter. Survivum up. Sure. Roguelite shooters. So similar to what we played the first episode, which was Keeper's Toll, top-down roguelite, survive 'em up kind of game. We're doing that, except this time we're upgrading guns, and it was immediately much more difficult than the first one until you get the hang of it. So that is what we played this time. I thought we'd start with talking about the world that they've created for us. I don't think there's a story in any shape or
I
form yet.
do not see any. I have not seen anything really that kind of explains why we're there. But other than go here, shoot stuff, survive.
Do it
But
again. Do it again. Do it
but it
again.
also looks like there's a number of things that they're still gonna flesh out.
Correct.
But
Correct. There are currently two character types you can play, and I should have taken notes for what they're called. But you just kind of the basic guy who's
Vixen and Grim.
Grim and
Grim.
Vixen. Yeah.
Grim and Vixen. So Grim, his special ability is like it gives you 20 seconds of increased fire rate because you're upgrading your gun. So increased fire rate, increased damage, and stuff like that. And then it takes like a minute or two to recharge. Vixen, you can throw 3 fire bombs, and it takes forever to recharge.
Did Vixen have a second? I never really used her because I know Grim had one that kind of like increased your movement speed.
Grim had the dodgy one.
It
Yeah,
had
the
kind of a
movement speed
dodgy
one.
movement one that I immediately got rid of as soon as I could.
I did too.
Um,
I don't know if Vixen has a second one. I didn't.
I honestly, I never played Vixen.
There wasn't
interesting
enough
that-
difference in those two characters for me to feel like I had to play one or the other. I just played Grim the most.
Yeah.
Large map though, I will say one of our big
Yeah.
complaints last week, as if it was last episode about Keeper's Toll was there was no point in exploring the map. You could literally basically just stand still and they're going to spawn everything near you and you just go find it. The map, I wouldn't say overwhelmingly large, but because a run can only go about 20 minutes before it's over, it takes quite a few runs to explore the whole thing.
It was surprising, like as you kind of kept going and you're like, wait a minute, this is a whole nother area. Wait a minute, there's still more. When then, yeah, I was actually quite surprised on all of that.
And it's only 2 biomes. There's the Chaos Grove and then there's the Hive Baron. And there's different enemies and different bosses that come from that and some different challenges. But even with just 2 biomes, I mean, it does feel like a serious amount of real estate that you can cover, and it's worth covering. Because another complaint we had was there was no incentive to explore. But for this, if you want to find the upgrades that you can go for, if you want to find, the augment upgrades for your gun, if you want to find the pod upgrades, and
If you wanted to find basically anything, you
had to go find
had to move
and then complete a challenge in order to get it, which is usually just stand in a circle until the percentage is
just
on it.
survive.
Right. But at least it was something, and I ended up finding myself coming back to this and going, okay, I know this is a good run. I just need to, I'm not going to try and collect on my experience. I'm just going to try and get as much ground covered in this run as possible this time around.
Yeah. As soon as I learned that was what you need to do, I started making more progress. Because initially, I think what my brain was like, what I was doing was wherever the first spawn point you get, I would stand there and I would literally run in a circle, kill things and collect experience until I leveled up enough. And I get to level 10 or so and be like, okay, I feel a little bit better. And I'd start running south or north, one of the two. And then I would die because, as you just said, runs 20 minutes or so because the game kind of force kills you. And that kept happening. And I would get no blueprints. I got no extra genes. I got nothing. And so I was like, well, why don't I just sprint somewhere? And as soon as I started doing that, I got so many blueprints and currency and all sorts of stuff. But initially, that was my plan. It was just stand there, experience, and then go on, because I was applying classic RPG rules in my brain, but it's not quite that way.
Well, and that's one thing about this type of game, because in order to get experience, you have to go collect all of the little experience sprites, to pick them up. And it gets really hard to be like, I just need to leave these behind and keep exploring the map. I will level up, it just won't be as fast. And it was really nice to have, for Keeper's Toll, you would collect the magnet, and that's how you'd suck everything in. For this, at least, there were the towers that you could destroy and pick up the thing and collect all the stuff or a good chunk of the stuff you had left behind to not lose all of that experience. It was nice to be able to discover that, overcome the challenge of destroying the tower, and then get all of that experience still and level up a few times.
Yeah.
So it was good.
Yeah, and it was also funny because I think, Keeper's Toll, when you leveled up, it just opened a menu, This one, the game can sometimes mess with you and be like, "Oh yeah, I see that big group of enemies you just got through. Well, I'm gonna put the upgrade right behind them,
Uh-huh.
and you have to go back."
It also seemed like anytime you found, one of the boxes that had a new augment in it or something, that when you would stand in the circle, the enemy spawn rate would increase. Did you guys feel like that was true as well? I have no proof of
Um,
that. It was more of like oh my god, it feels like all of a sudden there's a lot more enemies coming at me.
I think the
Either
reason it
that or
felt
it's
that
just because
way,
you weren't
you were
moving, and then they were
moving,
just
you weren't leaving
spawning
them
on all
behind.
sides.
Yeah, you weren't. They were spawning essentially behind you as you're running, but then you're essentially sitting still. And this game did a really good job about just spawning a ton of stuff, especially when you do
Mm.
that. Like it desens or well, besides watching Spleen play it earlier, it de-incentivized people just standing still. You had to move. You didn't have a choice. There's too much stuff going on to be in one tight circle like we could
Were either of
with
you able
you know.
to get the achievement for standing 3 minutes without moving?
No.
Yes.
I
Yep.
did. I couldn't get it. I didn't get it. So good for you.
Yeah, I got it. Charger
Mm-hmm.
tried to ruin that, but I was able to hold off just long enough.
Bosses are just like the spacing of bosses seems to be just right to kind of wreck that at the end. The two times I got close, a boss spawned and started bodying me and killing me, and I was like, "Well, I gotta move now. This is a good run." So good for you. Good for you for getting that. So I guess let's explain the gameplay loop a little bit here. So you get dropped in to this area, and it is not a procedurally generated area. It is the same every time, but it's just very large. And so you have a pretty good idea of, as you're discovering the map, where you need to go, or where you haven't explored yet. Like the fog of war basically is there, so you can't tell exactly what is happening until you've explored that area. And the basic idea is there are hordes of enemies. You want to kill them. You want to collect resources that you can use to buy upgrades later on when you go back to the hub, which is the hub in outer space. Is that
I think it looks
Think
like I feel like
so.
you're on a spaceship.
okay? Yeah,
Maybe like
you're like,
above the planet or something.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Basically, it felt like Starbound to me.
Yeah.
So you're in between rounds. You're up on the ship, but you get dropped in. And you're just down there killing enemies and discovering as much as you can and then fighting bosses. The bosses seem to basically be on a timer this time around.
Kind of felt like a level it kind of felt like a little bit of a combination of kind of level and time.
I
I don't know. Maybe it's just cuz you kind of reach this roughly the same level by roughly the same time. I don't know.
right
I
it
think it was time. At least that's what it felt like. Because it felt like a spacing kind of always stayed the same. Like I could almost feel when I was about to feel that next wave of enemies come in, and then the boss spawn
It
immediately
definitely had a
after.
tell. It has a tell before the boss because I feel like all like right before it happens, there's this huge influx of enemies,
right
and you kind of get swarmed right before a boss shows up.
right. And I will say I also think it's predominantly on a timer because there were, when I was trying to stand still, I'm basically collecting no experience at that point, and the bosses would still show up.
That's yeah, I guess that's true.
So, it there is a level range that it seems like certain bosses show up in, but I think that is just because that is the typical level range you're going to be in
Yeah,
by that
maybe
time.
maybe it has like an if then setup in the coding
Something.
or
The
something.
the only thing that seemed to be consistent with the bosses was the biome you were in dictated which later mid to late bosses you were going to get.
Hmm.
So if I am in the Chaos Grove, after Bertha, the one-eyed
Yeah.
Cyclops thing, then the Watcher thing. That's technically what it would be. Then I'm going to get Viperous, right? That is the next boss, and I'm going to get Gun or Gang. Those are definitely the bosses I'm going to get. Or Big Carl, right? Those are the bosses. But
Hmm.
if I am in the Hive Baron, then I'm going to get um, Queen Betty.
Uh, Queen Betty. I think you can still get Viperous or Charger. Maybe no, I don't think you get Vibrous. I think it's charge.
You get
Charger?
Charger either one, and so
Oh, that's true.
I don't know if you remember, but I was like, did you guys know you can get Charger twice in one run? And it turns out if you get Charger and you're in one biome and then you move to the other biome, the next boss will be
Oh,
Charger
you get
again.
Charger again. That's funny.
Yeah, I was like, he's a different color, but it's Charger again. Okay. So yeah. Anyway, you fight bosses, and then I think this one differs quite a bit from Keeper's Toll in that there is no like curse mode. You know, after you beat the final boss of the
Yeah.
area, you can't play until you die, right? You either die in the run or you kill one of the two final bosses currently in the game. You finish the run and then you get teleported back to the hub in order to start spending all of your stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are only two. It's either you're gonna get Malfoy or you're gonna get Titanus,
Dung Beetle and
whatever his name is.
Treebeard.
Right, right. You're either gonna get one of those two. So that's kind of the gameplay loop: is get dropped in, hordes of enemies, upgrade your gun as much as possible, find new things on the map, and then if you get lucky, you survive all the way through the last bosses, and you go spend your upgrades, buy new guns, buy things, upgrade your character, do it again. That's basically the gameplay loop here.
Very Borderlands. Shoot, loot, repeat.
Yeah,
it
it really is.
does feel very Borderlands, and I think once we start talking about like the next thing I kind of have, other than enemy types, was the actual upgrading of the guns, which does get Borderlands level ridiculous, I would say, in many ways. But before that, one of the complaints that Phenom had about Keeper's Toll was the lack of. There were lots of different enemy sprites, but none of them really did anything different for the most part. I would say, in a large part, that is already different in this game.
Massive.
I can already tell you the watchers that do the area of effect, and all of a sudden, especially if you're doing a build that relies on close range, those guys are a nightmare to deal with at times. If you're in the 1-star difficulty Hive Baron, you get the little serpent guys with wings that are really fast. Those guys are really tough to deal with. You have the guy that spawns other enemies. Like, I can actually name the enemies that annoyed me this time.
Yep.
Whereas I could not tell you in Keeper's Toll, other than one or two instances, what enemies actually posed any
Right.
threat.
100%
It took
agree.
me forever to realize that there was like one little minion activating the rings that summoned more enemies.
Right.
Because it just starts blending in with everything else that you just can't tell where it's coming from for a while, and then you just keep getting all these purple rings and more enemies. And
As soon as I saw ground effect, I started freaking out, and I was like, "Don't stand in it." Which it turns out on that one it would have been fine. It's just spawning enemies. But anytime I see
Yeah.
a ground effect, I typically like the number one rule of raiding.
Rule number
and
one,
doing dungeons.
don't-
Don't stand in shit. Okay, well, I'm not gonna stand in that. Like, that makes sense to me. I think I had mentioned this actually when I was helping Fen move. One thing that they've already started doing, and I think they'll get even better at as they develop this game, since it's also in early access. The enemies preceding the boss teach you what the boss is going to be doing.
Yeah.
And the best example of this is Bertha, obviously. You have Bertha is a big watcher. You have the little watchers that are already doing that same effect. Bertha just happens to do 3 beams of them. You also have, for Charger, his big thing is he charges around and he'll just suddenly speed up and charge towards you. He leaves a trail of stuff, but there are those little guys that charge at you and do something similar. I like that. Any game that does that and already gives you an idea of what a boss might do, I'm going, okay, someone's thought this through. I'm enjoying this. Not all of the bosses in this game do that yet, but those two are the big examples I can think of, oh, okay, I see what you're doing. I like this.
Agreed.
Agreed. Good.
Agreed.
So I think we should talk about the number one thing that I think really does make this different, especially the Keeper's Toll, but potentially even than the other roguelite shooter survival mode kind of games is the guns. So each gun, you start with a chassis. So, your very first run, you just have a pistol, which has a somewhat slow rate of fire, a clip of, I think, 8 shots, not super high damage, right?
It's fairly weak. I think the description's like it's fairly weak, but
But,
you
and that butt was, I didn't realize how big that butt was until later on when I messaged you guys and I was
that's
like, okay, do not
that's
sleep
one
on
big
the pistol. That's one big
that is
butt.
one big butt.
Right. But you have, the pistol, you have a shotgun, you have an assault rifle, you have an AK-47, you have a rocket launcher, and eventually you start getting into some of the crazier guns, all the way up until a gun. I didn't get it, but I was watching Spleen play with it right before we recorded,
A gun that shoots bullets that also shoot bullets.
which is a very Borderlands sentence. Let's be honest. So you start with any of those basic chassis, right? Which is it's going to have a certain rate of fire. It's going to have a certain clip size. It's going to have an effective distance. So there is a damage fall off for most of the guns. There are a couple like the 50 caliber rifle technically doesn't have a damage fall off because it can shoot so far, right? So you start with
And
that
the
basic
railgun.
chassis. Oh yeah, and the railgun, which I never tried. I think I have it, but I didn't try it. Some of them are really expensive, and so I got most of the guns. But so you get dropped in the map, you choose your chassis, whatever you want your chassis to be, and then at that point, every time you level up, a pod gets dropped down from, I guess, the moon base or whatever it is. The pod drops onto the ground. Sometimes it damages enemies, which is really nice.
I think they if they land on enemies, it will damage them.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that effect. And eventually you get pods later on that like heal you and stuff. But
Yeah, there are.
right, but you either get, at least starting out, you either get a blue pod, which is a tuning pod, or a yellow pod, which is an augment pod. So the augments are the important ones here. The augments are the things that are going to be game changing, and they come in the form of basically attachments that would go on a gun, a grip, a scope, a stock, underbarrel,
the barrel.
yeah, all of these things. And starting out you don't have much, but eventually you start getting these crazy augments, and each augment has a skill tree in itself. So, for example, the helix barrel, which are what's the one that shoots really
The Hellfire.
the Hellfire barrel,
Something.
right?
Something.
The Hellfire barrel, it like doubles your fire rate, which is actually really important in this game, but reduces your clip size or your magazine size.
I think that one was it clip size, or I think it was reload speed.
It might be reload speed, something, but there's
Anyway,
a give and take, right?
there's a lot of ones that are give and take.
Right. And at first, that's like once you get that, that's it. You just have that. But eventually, once you unlock more and more and more by finding these things out in the world, these augments, and you purchase them in between runs, that the Hellfire barrel will have a second upgrade, health number 2, whatever, and it has its own benefits. But then you get to choose. It branches at that point, and I can't remember the exact split, but I know the bottom tree. If you take it and you get to the last one, then if your fire rate, any bullet that hits an enemy that has a fire rate over at 60, which is maximum 60 bullets per second, they automatically catch fire. And so now you're doing on fire damage at the same time. And I was like, oh, that's fun. Okay, so let's play with that. You have other augments like, and I don't know about you guys, but the ones that I ended up finding to be the most effective were either the ones that split up your bullets. So my bullet hits this, it splits into 3 other bullets, that splits into 3 other bullets, and it kind of, while there is a damage fall off each time they split, you're covering the whole map, or you're covering the whole screen with what you're doing. Or the ones that either created a containment field, which your bullets couldn't go very far, but they would bounce all over around you and protect you. Or
they'll just become a massive bullets.
I sent you guys the video of me. I look like the Avatar. I look as in the Avatar state. I was just a blue ball running around destroying everything. Or the
The one that starts out with it increases your rate of fire, and if you get hit, it gives you an electric shock that hurts
Right.
everything around you. But then as you level it up, it will then allow the bullets to orbit around you. It does have some trade-offs when you do that. I think it messes with your rate of fire, your magazine size, and the damage. It reduces them, but it also is increasing the amount of bullets you have, because then you're encircled in bullets and you're shooting your bullets, and then it really doesn't take all that long to build the damage all back up to where you had it, and now you have this protective bubble of death and destruction.
And it's fun. So we'll talk more about our favorite builds here in a little bit, but that is the main part. That's the yellow pods are the ones you like get excited to see. You're like, oh, okay, it's gonna give me 3 options, and especially as you started to unlock more and more things, I definitely got to the point where I was like, yes, this is one that I know I'm gonna get really excited about. This is one I know I'm gonna want, and then I can't wait to see what the next yellow pod is. Now the blue pods, the tuning pods, are but more like your basic upgrades. It might increase magazine size, it might increase reload speed. These are just basic stat upgrades, which are nice, especially when you know you're going for a certain build, but they aren't as crucial as the augment upgrades. And there are actually quite a few stats in this game.
Yeah, there are a ton of stats, which was it's kind of ridiculous, and I was glad once someone told me that I could just mouse over and see what they actually do. That definitely helped, because a lot of them, I mean, they were a lot of them were straightforward, but then there were others where I'm just like, what does that mean? Like, it was a bullet count. Okay, what is? I guess it was one that was kind of like, okay, well, maybe that means if you get it above 1, you could potentially shoot more than 1 bullet, which I guess that makes sense. But then of course, then you check it, and then it's like, oh yeah, that's what it does. If you I think it's above a certain threshold, it will there's a increases the chance of firing a second bullet with your bullet.
I think with bullet count, you know, what you start at 1 for most guns, I think, which means each time you hit the
Yeah, the shotgun's
trigger.
like 6, something like that.
Sure, most of them, but
Yeah.
each time you hit the trigger, 1 bullet fires, or 6, or whatever. And then once you start increasing that, usually it's incremental. So like one of the tuning things is 8% increased bullet count. Well, then you go to 1.08, right? So for each fragmented bit of the skill number there, you get a 50% chance of it firing another bullet, right? I think that is the way that one works. And so it will always fire 2 bullets, but there is a 50-50 chance that it might. When you get that number up higher and you really do increase your bullet count, it can get really crazy, especially if you're using a splitter magazine or something like that. My computer is pretty darn good, and my game did lag a few times because of the
Oh,
amount of
same.
sprites on screen from bullets. So yeah, that's the basic gameplay loop. That's kind of what you're looking for, are augments, and they do get pretty ridiculous. There are resources to find, and I do think this is a place where they need to balance things. I can't remember what the little blue containers are called. Those are pretty easy to find, and you don't need a ton of them. But the honeycombs that you drop from the bees and stuff, you need for almost everything, it seems like. And the only place to get those is in the Hive Baron, which, if that's not a place that you're currently exploring, means you can't buy the upgrades that you found for a while, and it can be really frustrating to me.
Yeah, and they also, like, once you get far enough, it's like you need to have a drop from one of the specific bosses. And a lot of times it's like a bunch of honeycombs, so you need to be in the desert area, but you need the big tree guy ball,
Right.
whatever it is. So it takes, like, it gets to a point where you're having to take multiple runs, or you like spend a lot of time in the Hive Barrens, and then you just try to run to the other area
To get
um
Malfor at the very end.
to get
Right.
to get them at the very end. But
Because Titanus, like for Malfor, every time you kill him, you can use his heart. His heart is
yeah,
one of the required resources. But Titanus, the big beetle guy in the Hive Barrens, has no drop that you can use to spend
it's
on anything, right?
he drops something. I just don't know if either you have to get the other guys, you have to get the stuff leveled up enough first, or maybe they just haven't added those in yet. I don't know. I'm not
Okay.
100% sure on
Okay.
that.
It seems like a place they're working on the game. Like the
Yeah.
resources are cool, especially some of the excuse me, some of the augments you can take. Like for every resource I pick up, it boosts this certain stat for 5 seconds or
X amount of,
whatever.
yeah. Yeah.
That can be really cool, and I like that. But for like the upgrades in between, it's a little frustrating to feel like I'm locked into one resource. And speaking of resources, so there are in that moon base or whatever it is, there are basically four things that you're going to want to be spending your money between runs on and your resources. You can upgrade your drone, so we should probably talk about the drone here in a
Oh
minute.
yeah. You
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 can
get a friend.
right, you get a friend if you want. There is the arms dealer, which is basically sells the augments and any of the guns that you can unlock. The pod upgrades, which once you beat Titanus, you unlock that. I think it's Titanus. You unlock that area, or Malfor. Which is it? Malfor?
I think it's Titanus,
Anyway,
and then
beat one of the two
Malfor
final bosses.
unlocks the pod drop,
That's
I
right.
believe.
So, pod upgrades. So every time you level up, a pod drops in. There are a bunch of different kinds of pods that you can unlock. One where you can re-roll what they've given you a few times. Um, one where you can
A
kind of control where it's dropped. One where it does a healing aura around it. What is the
You can
black one?
there's one
Banish one.
where there's a banish one, and I just recently unlocked one where it's just like this smasher one, so it has a bigger radius
Oh, okay.
when it lands.
Man, I
So
missed that. I suck at this game. I learned that pretty quick. I would always get hyper focused on the towers because the towers would drop the green orb that would like
Yeah.
suck in all
Mhm.
the XP.
Yeah.
I would hyper focus on those every single
and
time,
then
and then I
your
would die.
health is all but gone, and yeah, it's rough.
Exactly. So I never got what you guys are talking about. That's wild.
So it's actually kind of cool. I actually like what they do. So in the environment, you'll find a crashed, kind of destroyed pod, and there will be between 4 and 6 parts of that pod that are spread around a certain area, and you have to pick them up, and it makes you slow, and you take it back over and you drop it on the damaged pod, and once you collect them all, it gives you the chance to, when you get back to the moon base, to buy the upgraded pod. And so eventually, instead of just the augment pod and the tuning pod, you have a pod that allows you to re-roll 3 times any augments that are there.
It's like a gambler one. The gambler one is the one that lets you re-roll, and then
A banish one that allows you to banish up to 2 of the 3 upgrades that it's shown you to reduce the pool. So they're like the blood magazine is one I rarely wanted, so I would almost always
yeah,
banish that one. But that takes it out of the potential pool. You have one where you could kind of guide it with the mouse and show it where to drop the smasher one, and then
I
you had
never
a
got that
healing
one.
pod.
The healing one is actually pretty helpful.
It
Um,
can be. I have some notes for the developer on
if
how
you
that one
if you
should
have
work.
if you have the right setup, that allows you to be able to stay still for a couple seconds to let it work. Um, because it's one that had to learn. I learned real quick that you have to just stand in the aura and not just pick up the pod, because you will get maybe one tick of healing if you just immediately get the pod,
I
which is
accidentally picked up the pod a few times and it
yeah.
pissed me off.
Which I'm trying to decide whether I like or hate that design of it, because I mean, it's kind of interesting, but I also feel like maybe they should just give us um instead of in an aura, it just heals you when it hits you.
So I,
But
I think my suggestion to the developer for this would be if I pick it up, I get a flat rate and a
yeah,
reduced flat rate. So let's say I get 30% of my health pool recharge all at once. However, if I stand in the aura that pulses and kind of have to survive, it can go up to like 80% or something. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So that way, there is a benefit to standing around it. But if I'm in a hurry or something, or I accidentally run into it,
Right.
I still get healed because it definitely screwed me at least one or two times where I was trying to stay near it. I accidentally hit it and then I didn't get any healing out of it or very little. I like the idea of it, and especially when you can decide what pods come when, which is another ability you get later
Mm-hmm.
on potentially.
Yeah.
But it just needs some tweaking.
Yeah, I swear, as like when we were first kind of playing it, I had a couple of gripes with like
Quality healing
the
items.
quality healing items and the pods. At first, when I started unlocking them, it felt like they were just literally going down the list of what I unlocked. So I was getting like 3 healing pods in a row, the gambler ones in a row, and all like.
Right.
But I don't know. I feel like they like had to have released some patches or something that I wasn't paying attention to, because or I just or things kind of just adjusted as time went, but it felt like those started becoming a little more random, where it was not always going to, it wasn't always my healing ones, because there was a streak, a stint of time, like right when I unlocked the specifically the healing ones, that like my first 3 at the beginning of my run were the healing ones, and I'm like, this is not when I need them.
Right.
But now I don't know if they released patches or just things had to like settle after unlocking them. I don't know, but it does feel like those are a little more random now.
Which is good and bad.
Yeah.
Um, I guess I don't know. You're right though. It does feel like when there's a new one, you get it like quite a few times in a row. But
Mm-hmm.
also, and um, it's important to note for anyone picking this game up, read the description on the pistol because at least the way it is in the current build of the game, it gets augment drops more often than any other gun. You can upgrade a pistol so much more quickly than any of the other chassis in the game.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a possible chance that I feel like I got more because all of the pod upgrades are technically augment pods.
Oh, and that could have been skewing stuff with it.
Correct. So if you were happen to be using a pistol at that time and you're like, I got 3 banish pods and a lottery pod or a
Uh-huh.
slot machine
Maybe,
pod.
okay, so maybe that's what was happening.
It's possible, and so
Yeah.
that could be it. I don't know, but I like the variance of the pods, and I also like the ability to plan when they come. But I think you're right. There are definitely times when I didn't want to see a healing pod. I'm like, I'm fine. And there are certain runs where I was so strong it didn't matter. So, this is that kind of game where that's going to happen sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay. So, the arms dealer pod upgrades, research lab. This is one that eventually I think becomes very impactful. So, for each Nimrod, so you have Grim, you have Vixen so far. They're going to add more to the game at some point. You can go in and you can start upgrading their genetics, and you start finding more and more of these. The basic ones are like, okay, increase your health by 4% for each one that you put in the genetic tree for that slot. Another
Mm-hmm.
might be it was health and critical strike, right? Are the first two you get?
There's a bunch of different genes that you can get. Um Reload speed, bullets,
Amount of money
effect
dropped,
size,
resources dropped.
uh max health, healing regen.
And
uh
these are all things that you don't upgrade them during a run. These are just the innate skills, the innate um, stats of your character before you start a run. And so at first, having 4% more health doesn't make much difference. But I definitely started to tailor my genetics as I upgraded them
yeah.
based on what I was going for. So at one point, I knew that with uh, I think is the second level of the Hellfire Barrel, or maybe third. Um, for each bullet you fire up to a certain amount, and increases your rate of fire for each empty
Mm-hmm.
piece of the
The
magazine.
longer you shoot, the faster it shoots.
So essentially, the bigger the magazine, the faster my rate of fire. So I think I was like, okay, let's increase my natural magazine size or innate magazine size, or increase my innate rate of fire to give myself a head start. Or, you know, I want to start with a critical strike chance of 50 or 45 or 50%. That way I don't have to spend nearly as many of my augments or my tuning to get to 100%, and then I can just focusing on my crit bonus, because there's an augment that exponentially increases my crit bonus, things like that. And so it started off being kind of meh, but I will say, like, especially if you're trying to do a specific type of build, it is really, really impactful to put the time into the research lab. And I don't know if you
Well, and
got to
that's
do any of that, Fen. I don't know if you
I
made
did
it.
do
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
I managed to
Yeah.
get to that portion.
I focused heavily at the beginning. I just stacked it full of health regen
Yep.
because I was just trying to do anything just to stay alive.
Right.
And so yeah, I remember just kind of filling every slot I could with health related stuff, but that was also one that I felt like has improved from when I started playing it. So I don't it was just another one. I don't know if I just needed to explore more and I was only exploring very barren areas, but um I've noticed more that I've run into like the little apple trees or the
Right.
and I'll actually run across like a health pack. Those
Right.
those are still rarer, but not as rare as it felt at the beginning.
Something I will say to anybody that is picking up this game, and is either new to the genre or has played like, if you've played Keeper's Toll, this game is going to immediately be more difficult. Like, there's no question about that. My tip would be, I have a couple tips. Number one, don't get discouraged. It's going to get easier. Two, explore. Like, risk your life to explore the map, because that's where you're going to get the upgrades. Um, and oh, I had a third one. Oh, it's gone. Just, I guess, just don't get discouraged. Like, it is going to get easier. You are going to start getting some crazy stuff as long as you're exploring the map. I had a third one. I can't think of it. It gets easier. It gets better.
Yeah, one piece of advice I always have, if it's like have we really talked about the drone yet?
Let's talk about the drone. Yeah. So the
Okay.
first run in the game, you're just there by yourself, and I think you find the drone out in the
Oh,
world.
I have
I know, it
forgotten
feels like
how I
forever.
have a friend now.
I think you find it.
Either that or you had to like unlock it.
Some things. It's not hard. It's pretty basic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After that, you have a drone that you can choose to follow you around. And I think it's kind of cool that since you can't take a gun that you had in a previous run into the next run, you give your gun to the drone in the moon base, and it actually, the power level of that gun increases the base power of the drone, I think.
It basically what it does is then you're giving the drone your previous gun run, and so as you go, it's leveling up. So I think the final that number it shows is like its final at its finality. This is the the damage it does. I don't know if that's supposed to say the damage per second or whatever the power means, but um, it levels up with you. So
It actually, I
uh,
remember it saying this. It actually levels at the same pace in which you leveled the run that you
right.
had that gun
Oh, okay.
on. Because I would notice sometimes that it would level up faster than me or slower, depending on what was
Sure.
going on, or sometimes at the same time. And so it would level up
Mm-hmm.
at its own pace, essentially.
Yep.
Interesting. I think the highest drone power level I got was 7,400.
Mine
I
was
have
46, I think.
mine's 74 as well. My donut gun.
That feels pretty high, at least from what I've experienced. I had a lot of
I
high
wanna
6,000s, but
I
rarely
wanna
the seven.
say that there were some that like that the gun that you saw me using earlier,
Mm-hmm.
it only made to like 69. And it's way more insane than the donut gun was.
Right, right. Because
So
I
I'm
would
not
go
exactly
test
sure
my
what.
DPS on some of the stronger builds because there's an area in the moon base where you can beat up dummies, and it will tell
Yeah.
you how roughly how much damage per second you're doing. And it surprised me the rating versus the damage I would do.
Hmm.
Because I think there was one gun that only rated 6,700 that I was doing like 120, 130,000 damage per second with. Something stupid like that.
Yeah.
It was crazy. But the drone initially it just follows you around, and it upgrades on independently, and it technically gets augments just the same as you do. Now you don't get to choose them for the drone; it chooses them at random, I guess.
No, the augments are based off of the gun that you built.
It is. That's the way it works. I guess I just never caught on to that. I was like, oh, that's
Yep.
convenient that it
So
also
yeah,
has a
it's
containment
literally, yeah.
field. Now it makes sense that why it always had a containment field.
It basically is just you bringing in your last run into the run,
And it
into
just,
your current run.
see, these are the little things like figuring out that there was a skill tree for the augments and seeing it that I didn't notice until 20 plus hours in. So sometimes I'm dumb. But that makes complete sense. The drone makes a huge difference in the
It does.
difficulty of the game because the
Hmm.
drone gets equally ridiculous once
Yeah,
you get
if
past
you get
level
a
40.
insane gun in the last run, you throw that on there. And it also comes down to like you really got to take into account because you get to store 4 guns from your previous runs, and so you have to kind of really think about how your guns leveled up in in your previous runs. Um, like the one I call the donut gun is great, but it's hard to use if I don't use like a standard weapon as my kind of current gun because it didn't really become more effective until later in the run. So at the beginning, it's a little rough to get going. But then there's another gun you get where if like you get double your rate of fire, double your magazine size, and all these other couple, ridiculous things pretty early on, it's actually pretty good to throw on your drone because then it kind of helps take the brunt of uh, leveling up. So then you could use kind of a fun gun instead of having to use like the pistol, assault rifle, shotgun, those types, and you could use the ridiculous ones that take a little extra to get going.
That makes sense. I'm sure there is a meta there of giving the drone a certain build and then complementing that with whatever you're currently running.
Hmm.
That's
I started
interesting.
getting to a point where I would use whenever I give the drone the gun, even if I got like demolished or I felt like I was doing good. Sometimes I felt like I was doing better, maybe because I was moving faster, and I'd give a new gun to the drone, and it was actually underpowered to the other gun I was just using. And so then I would use that as a barometer of like how what was I doing right, what was feeling right, how powerful was this actually? Was this actually as strong as I think it was, or maybe it was weaker
Hmm.
than what I used to be using? And so then you obviously can sell them and continue to get currency that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's kind of how I started.
that's a great point. That is a great point.
Yeah,
The
that was kind of like one of the things that I always did is based on how I did the run. If I like the top row minus the sniper rifle, so like the pistol, shotgun, assault rifle, and I would say the SMG, maybe the AK as well. But the AK, only good thing about the AK is it hits like the pistol, but it has a little more penetration. So honestly, just use the pistol. Um, but those ones, like those are kind of like what I'd call like the standard guns, and then after that is where you kind of start getting the fun guns, the RPG. What is this one called? I might have the game open. The RPG, the Hydra missile, like the Tesla carbine, flamethrower, the optical carbine, what the one I call the donut gun. let's see, the plasma spiral, that's the bullets that shoot bullets, and a railgun. Like those ones are I call the fun guns, where it's like these are definitely going to take time to get going. But if you like have a run where you get a fun gun working, throw it on your drone, then use a standard one, and then you can kind of build both up. And I kind of basically just swap back and forth. If I'm like, I want to use a fun gun, I use a standard gun on the drone, and then, vice versa.
See, that's really smart.
And
I
that
didn't play that smart. You're playing smarter than me.
that honestly helped my success rate of just surviving for a while. Is just like I for a while I tried to I was like, oh, it'll be funny to do a double donut gun. No, don't do a double donut gun. I'm sure I mean there are ways to get it if you get the right setup. You could get it going pretty quick, but that would be a lot. There would be a lot of restarts just because you wouldn't get very far.
Because the donut gun, and just for anyone who hasn't played yet, it
That
shoots
is
at a
the-
high rate of fire versus everything else. I think it shoots starts at 20.
Yeah, it's a
rounds
rate of
per
fire of
second.
20. It's called the optical carbine. And so it shoots out it shoots out 7 shots, and as it goes, it kind of shoots like it tapered. So the first few, it starts out as a small ring, it spans to a larger ring, and then goes back down to a small ring. And
The
so
middle part of
the
the magazine does the most damage.
Yes, the middle part does the most damage compared to the ends, and it's just like a vroom, and it's really fun. And you can start, as you start increasing your magazine size and you start increasing the rate of fire, it starts getting a little more fun. And then, like in this case, made m- what I've made it the most effective was the orbital augment that made the bullets orbit around, because it was able to replenish those rings so quickly with how it fired. You basically turn into a blender. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think I even had splitting bullets on there as well, which was a whole nother level of insane.
Something I will say, and this is a big plus for this game, I had success with almost every weapon that was offered to me. I think I either completed or almost completed a run with every weapon except the shotgun.
I was about to say that was the one that just did not feel good to me.
I could never get a run that I liked with the shotgun.
I got a good setup early on where I got the double magazine size, and I think I got like a big rate of fire boost like real early. Um, so it became super effective in that. And then I eventually got like the it shoots faster as you keep shooting, and a bunch of another one. So that's kind of the shotgun's one of my go-to standard guns when I'm or for my drone, if I'm using it, because it gets up to a pretty high rate of fire um pretty quick, so then it kind of acts as a decent shield as I'm leveling up other stuff.
Yeah, the guns the chassis all really do
Hmm.
make a difference. Little variations needed here and there, and then some power level things. I personally think like the 50 caliber rifle is completely underpowered, while the pistol, because it gets augment so often, is completely overpowered. So they definitely have some balance things to work on in this game right now, in the state it's currently in.
Hmm.
Yeah. The other thing about the drone is you don't have to use it. And so one of the challenges I had put forth is there's an achievement in the game to survive 10 minutes without the drone. Did either of you able to complete
I
that?
did end up getting it.
It was
No,
not
I
as
can't say I
hard as I
did.
thought it would be.
I it took me about 4 tries to do it, but the first 3 I was still starting in the hard areas.
I ended up starting in the
And
just
so I
basic
finally
chaos
said,
grove.
okay, well, yeah, I went right back to this Chaos Grove, and it was a piece of cake. I would have gotten it first try. Honestly, I almost got it first try. But I made one wrong misstep, like direction, and got caught in a corner. And I had literally, I think I was like 10 seconds away,
Uh-huh.
and I slipped up because the gun just my guns like were just not strong enough to hold everything off. Um,
It
but
it
yeah, it was
it does
yeah
make a difference though in the
big.
difficulty of the game, but I'm not sure it makes enough of a difference currently.
Um, it's really like you could honestly complete runs without it.
Uh-huh.
It just is more or less a safety net where if you're getting a bad string of augments that just really aren't helping you, your drone can kind of pick up some of that slack to help and to help it just and I mean yeah, having a second gun just betters your odds of surviving. Um,
And I wonder if that is just the hard mode in this game, or if there is a way to incentivize you for not using the drone versus using it. And I don't know which direction I'd prefer they go with this game.
well, and yeah, eventually like once you unlock its shop, you can affect its behaviors and how it targets and
How it
different features and
moves,
stuff.
right?
So you can have it, either the default it just moves right next to you. It stays right near you. You can have it follow you, which it always stays where the player was, like
Two
2 meters.
seconds ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. So it's always following you in a line. And then you get stuff where it's like you follow, it can follow XP, where it literally goes after the XP nodes, which um, can get a little funny because it'll just start taking off on its own, all over the place. So, and that's definitely one where it starts to feel you might have to, you know, play with which targeting modes you'd want with that one, just because it's not going to be as close to you. And there's I'm trying to think which ones I've used. I didn't use the large circle where it kind of just orbits around.
Or
Honestly,
random.
with movement, I kind of kept it as default mainly because of the drone abilities where the bodyguard, it gives you extra armor if it's within a certain range from
Right.
you. And as long as if you use default movement, it's basically always within range to get that boost. But I mean, yeah, targets you can also, whatever's nearest to the drone, whatever's, you know, it'll shoot at whatever your crosshair is shooting at, which honestly I thought would be more effective. It's really not, because if you kill the enemy, it's still going to shoot where your crosshair is. So then
Hmm.
it's actually a wasted shot. Probably better for like bosses and more difficult things, but for the bulk of what you're dealing with all the mobs, it's very ineffective. Um, and then you get, of course, like whatever's the weakest on the screen, and you can also get one that where it just shoots behind you. It always shoots the opposite direction of your crosshair. I haven't tried that one out, but
They give you
that
options though.
yeah,
Yeah.
you get a bunch of different options. Um, and I believe also I think if you combine some of the different movements with some of the other abilities, because it also has a vacuum attachment where if it picks up XP and for you, and then it has turbo thrusters which helps it go, it doubles its move speed. So there's quite a bit that you get to do with the drone, and I kind of just found a setup that I liked and just have left it alone. Um, but yeah, there's quite a bit you can do with it and how you want to use it. And I think the way I probably have it set up is probably makes the game the easiest it can be, because it's right next to me. It shoots right, anything that's right near it. It basically just a very defensive pattern to protect me, as opposed to doing other stuff, which would leave me a little more vulnerable, but could potentially have better, um, returns for other ways later. But I like playing games on easy
Most of the time.
most of the time.
All right. Well, let's get toward the end here. We don't need to go through all the bosses, but of the like 10 bosses that are currently in the game, what's your favorite boss so far?
Oh man. I like, is it Big Carl? Was that what it's called?
Big
Or
Carl. Do we want to
Plant
explain how
One?
Big Carl works?
Big Carl, you'll be running around, and then all of a sudden you're encircled. What you may originally, at first think, oh, it's just a bunch of mobs circling me, bunch of health bars. You start killing a few, yada yada yada. When the ring of these enemies come together, all of a sudden you have a little shop of horrors in front of you, and
Audrey too.
you got Audrey too, and then it starts attacking and does its normal boss thing. A fun thing that I learned that you can do if you manage to kill the ring before it comes together, you don't have to fight the boss.
I love that. I had Big
And you
Carl
get
in my notes. I love it.
yep, you get the augment. I think that one's the fun one because that's the only one that really has like a setup. Um, all the other ones just kind of show up.
Other than Shroomite, which you said you never found.
I've never remember seeing the name Shroomite.
Fen, did you ever see Shroomite? Did you
I
ever run
think
into
you're
it?
on Shroomite. I don't know where you, I think you're making it up.
I don't think I ever saw Shumite either.
So I think there are two of them in the entire
Was he
current
in
map.
the maze? Because I just got there.
There might be one in the maze, but there's one in the southern part of the what is the 1-star Chaos Garden area to the south? The Royal
Uh,
Garden, the something
Royal
Garden.
Elder something. I don't know.
Whatever
Just
it is.
hard,
There's one
hard
in
area.
there. It looks like a rock. And then you hit it and you
Oh,
realize
do you
it
have
has
to?
a health bar. And once you hit it a few times, it does a little mini boss cutscene.
Yeah, more than likely, I just saw a rock and moved on and didn't even notice a health bar because, especially with how kind of I set my stuff up, visibility becomes very difficult later
Right.
on.
Right.
Uh, um, but
Honestly, it's not a challenging thing, and I got to the point where I would accidentally activate it, and it would die so fast you wouldn't even know.
for sure, mate.
Poor Shumite. I think it's neat that most of the bosses have a very distinct mechanic.
Hmm.
Even Split Serpent, which is the first boss everyone is going to run into, it
That one
does
caught me by
exactly what it
surprise.
says. Once you
Yeah.
defeat it, it splits into a bunch of little versions. It's not threatening in any way, but at least it does something. Bertha is the Watcher that has the ground effect where it launches a laser from its eye, or 3
Hmm.
lasers from its eye. Big Carl, like you said, if it meets in the middle, it becomes a big version instead of a bunch of little Carls. Gang shoots lasers at you. Charger charges and leaves stuff on the ground. Like, I love that
Yeah.
all of these bosses have things. However, the only boss that gave me the true like boss feeling so far is Malfor, and that's because Malfor has mechanics to a degree.
Yeah.
A few slam
Yeah.
attacks,
Both. Yeah.
a speed
Titanus
up
and Malfoy
attack.
both have more mechanics.
Yeah, my one big thing.
Titanuses are more easily dodgeable.
Yeah, I would
Is that a
say
word?
Malfor is the hardest boss in the game currently.
Yeah.
But my question to you guys is, and I wonder how they fix this. While the bosses are varied, they feel lackluster, especially after you've done a few runs. They're always in the open world. They only have a few mechanics. They don't feel special. This is the one place, one of the one or two places where I think that this game is a little underwhelming versus Keeper's Toll. At least Keeper's Toll had a few bosses that it would teleport you to their arena, and then there were like a distinct set of mechanics. Velia had the fire coming out of the floor, and then places you would stand and avoid things. The boss that would crawl after you, the skeleton boss, the Ebon King. These are fights I
Hmm.
remember. Other than knowing a little bit of what these bosses do, like what does Viperous do? Honestly, like,
I'd
do you
never
know?
let it get close enough to find out.
Precisely. Queen Betty, I think, shoots some
Queen
stuff at
Betty
you.
shoots. She shoots kind of like the towers.
Ooh. You know
Um,
what? Ooh, big deal. Malfor and Titanus have more stuff. How do you think, is there a
I
way for them to make the boss fights in this game feel
I
interesting, impactful, different?
yeah. I think that the bosses as they are now are great base level bosses. I think where it comes into is like when because there are areas of the map that are the harder areas, which they it's
Isn't well
they
delineated per se.
they add a horn to all of the mobs, and I think the bosses are kind of in a different color and there's a star next to their name. That could give them an opportunity in those aspects, which it could be on part of their roadmap, is that these hard bosses, they could introduce more mechanics. May, you know maybe Bertha, like hard mode Bertha, maybe there's more than one watcher, because honestly, when there's a swarm of those watchers, it's the most terrifying thing when you see like the pre-shot zone, all like 12 of them pop up, and you have to like just casually walk through because you only go one speed, and then they start firing behind you and you're just hoping you get out of the way in time. Like, maybe I think that what I would hope they would do is, for these hard mode areas, add more stuff in that regard. And then same for Malfour and Titanus, is they're right now hard mode is just I think just more health and stronger, which could be a good 1-star version. Maybe they make multiple stars, maybe they and increase the degrees like that.
Or even add modifiers like other games
Modify
have had.
Yeah, different modifiers, different things. Uh and it could even be things where, like, dead cells, where after you reach a certain difficulty setting, there's additional world difficulties, where with the miasma, malaise,
The
whatever the
malaise.
disease is,
Right.
yeah, the disease that adds an additional layer of you have to be careful type stuff to make sure you get to where you're going. But even then, they also would add slightly more mechanics, or different variations of things. I think it's very good. I think even, like, yeah, the bosses are a great base level, and I think from there they just need to ramp up um, what they can do. I mean, they have a pretty decent spread of bosses. Would be cool to eventually, introduce a handful more, especially when we know that on the roadmap there are new biomes that are um, on the list to do. So I'm assuming new biomes will have new bosses and new different things like that. Um, yeah, there's definitely, once you get to a certain level and a kind of a certain comfortable feel in the game, hard areas, normal areas, they all kind of feel the same.
The great thing about the hard areas is, and I started noticing this, you're looking for like the very light blue experience
Yeah.
sprites. Yeah, your beginning of your run is going to be kind of more difficult, but you're going to level up so quickly that it almost,
Hmm.
once you get used to
Yeah.
that spike in difficulty, you overcome that quickly to be able to explore deeper.
Yeah,
Because
and
you
I
can
that's
find, and maybe we should point that out, the map is big, but if you explore, you will find different places that you can start your run. You have to unlock it, but
yeah.
you can start your run there. And sometimes it's in a
Yes,
more
there
difficult area.
yes. You find different drop points.
Drop.
And I even find, like, there are certain drop points where I wish we could go back to the pod and teleport to a different point. I think that would help with
Yes.
traversing, especially
Yes.
because, well, the base, unless you really boost your movement speed, which I don't think you really get a whole lot of options to do,
The
nor would
the
you want
the
to.
rocket upgrade where each piece of
Yeah.
experience you collect makes you faster. It can, and I have a few runs recorded where my movement speed does get pretty crazy up there, but that's one of the few ways to really
Yeah.
increase your move speed.
Yeah. But this is like one of those games where you have to have like that perfect balance of movement and damage, because if you start moving too fast, you're not going to kill the enemy before
Bodying
you reach it.
everything, yeah.
Yeah, and then you die because you're sprinting into them. I
Maybe
think, yeah,
like a fast travel system, or even like a mount, like a hoverboard, or
well, yeah,
something that you unlock later.
something to increase. I know at the when I first started playing, I think the biggest thing adjustment to get used to was the movement. The fact, and it was just, I think, getting used to the bullet hell aspects of this, where you just have to kind of strategically move um in order to survive, and sometimes you are just going to have to body something to get through it. And that was definitely the biggest learning curve for me because I wanted a little dodge, just something that I could just shift out of the way just a little bit, and I would have been better off.
Well,
But
you
I
ditched
mean,
the dodge. Explain.
well, I
You
did. Well,
ditched
it
it.
was yeah. It wasn't really a dodge. It was just move a little faster for 10 seconds, and that's not what I want. I wanted just to be able to go whip out of the way because a lot of the times that I was dying was just because I was just not quite getting out of a way in time, and I would get, kind of caught in a bunch of them.
The
Um,
bloodlust, which is what it is basically. The bloodlust ability is better. It is just a better ability for this
yeah,
game.
being able to just increase your speed, rate of fire, and reload, I believe is. I don't know if it actually does damage.
Whatever
Um,
it does, it's better.
but yeah.
It's interesting
Um,
because I found that I actually enjoyed the dash more or the speed up more for me.
Sure.
But I also, anytime I play classes in any game ever, I always play the very nimble, fast, quick classes,
Sure.
because I'm reckless and need to get out of there quick. Is normally how I play.
Sure.
So it ended up working out for me because then I found that my brain would go full ADHD mode and I would dodge everything very, very well. And then I'd be out of
mhm.
the way of. And also, I learned whenever those circles of enemies would start flowing in, there was always a break somewhere, a
Yeah.
tunnel in which you could find to get out of that circle. So I would wait for that moment, hit it, and then be able to sprint out of the way to a
my
little bit more
simple
safety.
my simple brain is not equipped to handle such intricacies.
No, I just hit the bloodlust button and nuke everything, man. Yeah.
I mean, it definitely was a good ability for sure. It's just
um,
I don't know. I found for me, that's what worked well for me.
yeah.
Cool.
Um,
Let's see. Let's talk about the augments since that's the big one. We'll
mhm.
start with least favorite augment. Which augment did you try to avoid
Whew.
when it would come up?
For me, it was actually the containment field.
Really?
I needed the space between me and enemies, as much as I could, and with the containment field, that allowed them to get in very close, which did not end well for me ever.
Did you get up to the higher levels of the containment field? Like by the time you get to a containment field four?
No, I was doing a run earlier where I was doing better and it was feeling better, but I never quite got there.
The higher level ones, when the enemies are in the containment field, they move slower, and I think they take more damage. So
Interesting.
once you get the containment field up to, like, because the first time I got it, I
Yeah.
was like, this is terrible. I don't want the enemies this close. But as I upgraded it and got the right build, I was like, oh no, this is really good. Like I can do something with this.
Yeah. One thing I will give this game credit for is that I don't think it's like there is. I wouldn't really say there's a wrong build. It's just you have to understand how to put it together. Um,
Yeah.
and like you just have to kind of and you have to commit to the build. If like you put up the containment field, you have to start thinking about, okay, I really need to make sure my damage is up. I need to make sure, rate of fire is up. I need to make sure these things, all, X, Y, and Z are all
Maybe I
um
need retaliation damage,
yeah, retaliation, a number of
more
things
armor.
because yeah, more armor because you have to start thinking with what you're going to commit to because they're going to be closer other or like looking for the things where you want to keep them further away or you're knocked back. You have to kind of you have to really you can't second guess yourself and you have to just kind of go for it and hope for the best. And sometimes you get some really interesting uh turnout depending on what you set up and like and you have to it definitely helps that with the augments you can actually pull up the tree so that you can see like with
Which I
the
did
he
not realize until
yeah
almost 30 hours in that you could do
the
that.
helix barrel at first I didn't like it as much because i'm I've learned that I'm a big min maxer so I like green color I don't like seeing red.
Sure.
And so when I kept seeing something like, oh, okay, well, this is going to take this, and especially like if it touched rate of fire or damage, I was very anti those for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but once I started following the tree a little more and seeing what it can do and like add it, and then realizing, okay, yes, I can. I'm gonna lose a little bit of damage here, but that's doubled, quadrupled my bullet output, and then within a few levels, I get enough damage boost that it's perfectly fine. Um, it's just a lot of, and then eventually, like I could potentially explore more on different setups, but then of course I kind of I have my own meta of what I need to basically I basically know I will survive if I get these things. Um, but yeah, I don't know where my train of thought's going anymore.
I think the point you were trying to make, I think, and I totally agree with this, is there are a lot of different builds that can lead to successful runs. Sometimes in games like this, I feel like there are maybe 3 or 4 builds that have a high chance of getting a successful run, and the rest are kind of crap.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like in this game, I was like, other than a few builds, I was like, I can totally go this route and trust that if I follow where this is leading me, where this build is leading me, there's a good chance I'm going to finish this run successfully. Whether
Mm-hmm.
that is a high rate of fire build, whether that is a high crit damage build, a containment filled build, a retaliation demo, a high underbarrel recharge rate build. Like, they all did something different, and I had probably 20 recordings of different builds where it was like, this is different than the last one, and they all felt good in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the point you're trying to make, is that
There are easier builds and harder builds, but I would never say there's a wrong build.
the only thing I really want buffed in this game is like damage over time. The dots in this game, all of them feel very weak. Like the fire builds I would do, and I played Vixen for that reason, was to do some extra fire builds. They were fun, but it didn't feel like the damage over time that On Fire or
I
some of these other was doing was significant.
I want to say there might be a gene, or maybe that's effect, maybe the effect range, maybe not,
I think I
not like
with
damage over
her
time.
I ended up toward the end of my playtime increasing the duration
Effect
of the
size. Yeah.
effects, um, which helped. Don't get me wrong, and I still had some good runs, but like freezing enemies and then busting it and having all the damage is cool, and the electrocution damage is cool, and the fire damage is cool, but none of it feels like, when my rate of fire is high and I've synergized well, that is going to feel good by the time I'm level 50 plus. When
Mm-hmm.
my critical strike and crit bonus has synergized really well, that is going to feel good at the end of the run. Those things, or even high bullet count, when my bullets are splitting about a million times, that's going to feel good. By the time I got to the end of one where I'm using the flamethrower and I'm using the Hellfire barrel, and I'm at 60 fire rate, and I should be doing all this fire damage, including on the floor fire effects. That did not feel nearly as strong as
Uh-huh.
those other builds yet. So my least favorite augment, just to be clear, would be any of the Blood Magazine ones where it was like,
Mm.
you do more damage, over 50%, you do this extra amount of damage or whatever, but you
But
lose this
we're
much
gonna
health per shot.
Yeah,
yeah.
no.
I will There was later in the tree there was something where it's like I believe you lose 2% per shot hit. But then later on in the tree, you would eventually, like, killing an enemy would heal back some. I do believe it does stop at 50%.
Correct.
Where you don't, you're not just gonna kill yourself shooting enemies, but
The trade off still didn't feel good. We talked about
yeah,
that in Keeper's Toll, where we all kind of avoid things like that. The trade off still
yeah,
didn't feel good for me. It felt like I would get down to 40% or 50% health, and it was like, okay, what was the point? How do I get my health back up where I can keep getting this bonus?
yeah, and I mean, that is really the big kicker of, like, um they would need to have much better healing. I think like rate of healing, I think the rate of healing isn't bad to start with, like, the point 0.0 whatever, but I feel like they need to boost when you boost your healing regen, make it a little bit more, because that was always like, if you're not able to heal back up, then what's the point? You're just stuck at then you're just stuck at half health, and there's really no benefit.
This feels like a good
Um,
transition point here to favorite augment, and I think there is only one answer for what everyone's favorite augment should be, and that is the chevron.
Chevron's a good one.
If you get it within the first 4 upgrades. So let's be clear what the chevron does. So the chevron, for every enemy you kill, it gives
It's
you, was it
0.01.
0.01% extra bullet damage. You are going to be killing thousands and thousands and thousands of enemies in a complete run. If you get
Yeah.
that early, your bullet damage is going to be insane by the time
Yeah,
you're
and
level
it
40
just
or 50.
and it just keeps going and going. Like, no, yeah. At first it seems pretty slow and not all that effective, but then once you start getting to the point where it's just constant, every it was every, if the math, every 100 kills is a percent. So, and you're dropping thousands. So I mean, it definitely starts building up very quickly.
And level 2 of it gives your drone the same benefit.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. That's true. That's right.
It, like, maybe it, like, on screen, it isn't the most exciting to look at because there's no obvious effect.
Mm-hmm.
But later, anytime I got the chevron early, I was like, I need this run to go long because almost any build I did was going to be viable by level 40 or 50 because of the amount of kills and the amount of bullet damage I'm now doing, no matter what gun it was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we're talking about like most interesting, I can't remember. You probably have the game open. The one that eventually ended up with the bullets orbiting around you was easily the
Yes.
I
most.
did like that
You
one.
turn
I
into a
can't remember what it's
buzzsaw.
called. Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but that is one.
Dissonant.
It's
Something
yeah,
something.
it starts out with basically just retaliation damage at first, and you get hit, and you do a bunch of electric damage around everyone, and believe it increases your rate of fire, and then it does a little bit more and does a little more electric damage the second level. But then once you finally get to the third level, that's when things start getting interesting. That's when it finally adds um, it reduces your damage a little bit,
But
and
doubles your bullet count.
it doubles the bullet count, reduces the damage, and I believe reduces the rate of fire. But then you are orbited by whatever bullets your gun fires, which, depending on the type of gun you use, can get very interesting.
Could be missiles.
Um,
Could be fire.
missile. Uh,
Could be donuts.
um, it could be donuts. I got the RPG going at one point, which was very terrifying to just imagine a orbit of missiles. Um, but it is definitely one that whenever I got to a point in a run and I got the orbiting bullets, I basically at that point, I would say about 95% of the time, I was completing the run.
Yep. Yep.
There's really nothing, just because giving that range of keeping the enemy away from you, um, was like, it was just basically one that was just like, this is going to be a long run. If I'm at this point, the only way I'll die is to the boss. And even then, by the time I would get to that point, I would be just running away from the boss, not because I didn't want to die, it's because I was still trying to explore. Um, um, and I didn't want to kill him too quickly.
Right.
Um, but that one's fun. I think my go-to ones are, if I can get the orbiting bullet one. I would take the Hellfire one that
Mm-hmm.
increases the rate of fire instead, depending on the type of gun I'm using.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because those two augments are both barrel augments, so you can only get one or the other, unfortunately.
Correct.
But I would almost always get splitting magazine if I could get it.
Yes. Yes.
Um, just because that just adds a whole level of ridiculousness on top of it, where so you shoot your bullet, it hits it, and then it breaks apart into smaller projectiles, and then as you level it up, it'll go from, I think, eventually at first it's like it breaks apart into 3 projectiles, and then as you level it up, it's like it'll arc for one, and then each additional one is based on the amount of augments you have on your gun. So when you get to later in the game, it gets very interesting. And later, if you get later into the run, then your very high end computer starts lagging depending on what you're using. Um, which it's fun, which was another fun one with like the gun that, the bullets shoot bullets, and the RPG and fire ones. Those are always very fun ones to watch, because then you get these really ridiculous breaking off of enemies, and it just eventually becomes a blanket of whatever bullet you're using is everywhere. Trying to think.
And
Stocks,
it should also be noted that most of the bosses drop a special augment or
oh,
two,
yes,
or have a chance to drop a special augment, and some of those, depending on the run you're going for, are game breaking. Split Serpent drops one that, you was it 50% less magazine or 50% less health or something, but it like your bullet split suddenly becomes crazy. Gang, if you're looking for just making a lot of money quickly, Gang drops one that allows you to like up your credit rate by 50%. So the bosses
yeah,
themselves drop special ones.
yeah. A lot of times, yeah, a lot of the bosses will have kind of like one or two that are kind of themed to them. And then there's kind of these other basic ones that, are a lot of them, kind of ones I can remember. It's like one's focused around crit chance, one's kind of focused around like health and regeneration,
Bullet
one's
count.
damage kickback, and then there's some that are like, more specific to the boss, that those those a lot of times kind of have a give or take one, where you get more bullet count, but you lose more bullet count, but you lose damage again, kind of thing. But um there's a lot of trade-offs, but um yeah, those boss augments can definitely make or break, especially like um typically when I use those, I just get I get the crit chance ones, because very quickly you just all of a sudden your gun's at 100% crit chance, so then you're just always critting, and so you can just dish out a ton of damage, and then you just work on boosting the crit bonus, and you just keep doing more and more and more and more damage. It's just
Especially Chevron plus crit chance, because
yeah, 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 yeah.
when your bullet damage is like 432 when it started out at like 5, and you have
hmm
100% crit chance, and your crit bonus is like 200 plus, you
Yeah.
are almost unstoppable, or are sometimes
Yeah,
unstoppable at that point.
the very very easy, once you kind of figure out the formula, get to the point where by the time you get to the final boss, you're running away from them just to be able to play longer, not because you're gonna die.
Yep. And they do have an
Um,
enrage timer, which I never let get full. I don't know what
yeah,
happens at that point.
I at this point I just started letting it get about 3/4 of the way, and then I just get close enough and I melt them before it ever gets to the
Right.
top.
Right. Cool. Okay.
um,
Well, we're running a little long here, so I'm gonna skip a couple things, and let's just go to final thoughts here. In most memorable moment, I feel like Spleen and I have completely dominated the conversation here, Fen. So
I apologize.
do you wanna start us off with memorable moment, and then your concluding thoughts and your score, one out of 5, or one
Definitely
through
one of my
five?
memorable. Most of the memorable moments I have will come from when there would just be a sudden wave of enemies, and then the vessel would be watching me play, and we'd both be panicking because there's the sheer amount of things on screen, and I just would be hoping I would survive. And then if I did, it was a miracle. And then all of a sudden, a boss would spawn. At one point, I did have my damage. Either my damage wasn't high enough, or I got so far in that the bosses were just out leveling me a little bit. I had two bosses at once. Um, I think I had Split
what?
Serpent, and then Bertha,
Were
right
you
after
just
that.
like
You kept Slit
avoiding?
Servant alive that long? That's impressive.
Yeah, it was not
Oh, I
fun.
didn't even know you
S-
could do
So I
that.
guess
Yeah,
the
you
mini bosses do not have enraged timers, just Malfoy and Titanus.
Yeah,
yeah, no, I had two on the screen at the same time,
I'm so
that's
sorry for
and
you,
that was
but cool.
terrifying. That was terrifying. Um, what is the scale we used last time? Was it 1 through 5, 1 through 10?
Yeah, one being throw this game in the trash.
Right,
5 being go play it right now.
5. I think I gave the last one like a 3. Definitely, this one's closer to a 4. Not quite a 5, right? There are small issues, but it's definitely one you should pick up. Definitely give it a shot. I think it's a lot of fun. Um, a lot more replayability from it. A very large map to explore, which we've talked about, and that being a lot of fun. And I'm very curious to see what content they bring in the future that just makes it that much better. Because I definitely would have loved more Nimrods to try, different abilities to try. Because yeah, Vixen just didn't feel
yeah,
fulfilling
and it
enough.
looks like they've set it up that they're going to. It's just they don't have them yet.
Right.
Because it looks like there's at least set it up when you go in. There's like a
5
little, in the little
total.
pod you can look at them. It looked like at least there was spots for 4.
4.
Right.
Okay.
At least it looked like they kind of set it up that eventually you'd have 4, and it'll be cool if they, you know, have a pretty different feel to them. That would make them worth exploring. Maybe there's ones that maybe eventually, and maybe they're trying to be that way. That um, different Nimrods cater better to certain weapons. Um,
Or even different kinds of play styles too.
yeah,
Maybe one that's
yeah,
slower and tankier, but like I
great
don't
with
know, different.
a slower tanky one, but great with like maybe it adds a it explosive based weapons level up faster with them,
Yeah,
or
some along those lines.
things like that, things like those regards where he kind of helps promote exploring both the different characters and explore the weapons other than like what would this look like with this insane setup,
Right.
kind of thing.
And I think earlier I said there were like 2 points where I think Keeper's Toll has an edge over this game. One being the boss fights in different arenas, and the
Mm,
second being, Keeper's Toll has 6 distinct classes, and that was one of my big pluses for that game was there are 6 classes and they all feel completely different to play. Right now, this game has 2 classes and they don't feel that much different to play from each other.
no,
Yes,
no,
they
not
yeah
at all.
they feel very very similar,
But if
but
they can find a way to separate them and add a bit more in that way, just beyond the guns, it definitely gets closer to a 5, in my opinion. It's a lot of fun. It is. It's definitely a lot more fun. And as you guys mentioned, I remember opening it and my first run, I died so quickly because it was just so much more difficult than what we had just played.
I yeah
But I loved it.
I
I
was not
remember
falling asleep at the keyboard.
I was
No,
not falling asleep at the
no.
keyboard. I remember just sitting there going like this is I honestly I didn't like it at first. Like I was not in a great mood. Uh um just trying to get the feel for it and just my frustrations with the movement and trying to and that very clearly all of that is just on me to figure out how to move and uh, after putting in however many hours I've put in, it's like okay, now I kind of know how to just avoid things and just kind of deal with it and um
Well, speaking of
yeah.
which, you want to go ahead and give us your conclusion, your final thoughts, and
Yeah,
your
I
score?
mean, my favorite thing at this point that I started doing with this game is I really got to the point after I kind of figured out what augments I liked and which ones, I found for how I like to play were the most effective. I was just like, what would an RPG look like doing the orbital insanity with split and stuff? And then I just kind of that's when I started tinkering with like, okay, what kind of gun does my drone need to have in order for me to pull off this ridiculousness? And then I would start playing that, and then like the run. Honestly, one of my favorite one of my more favorite runs have been kind of my more recent ones when I've used like the flamethrower, um, and um, the flamethrower and the bullets shooting bullets, and those ones just like I think it's funny watching, once you get it to the setups that are just so ridiculous that even though you have a high-end computer, your computer's going like, what are you doing?
Right.
Like those have been a lot of fun, and I think that just like in this case, especially with right now, I mean, it'd be cool for them to add a story into what we're doing and why we're doing it. So I'm just kind of making my own narrative, just like, what does this look like, and just staying curious with it. And I think it's a lot of fun, and a lot, if you kind of go in that just curious viewpoint, you have a lot more fun with it. Um, and of course, taking everything with a grain of salt, because of course it is early access and things have to develop and things have to, they're going to improve and change things as time goes on. Um, but I would still definitely give this a solid. I would give this a solid 4. It's definitely not one that you can just check out and while you're playing, but it's still one that you can just kind of chill, and um it's still in a lot of ways kind of chill, that you can just set stuff up, deal with a lot of insanity, and you know kill a lot of enemies and make weird guns.
I think I'll agree with all of that. I think there's not a high skill cap to this game. Like you don't have to
Yeah, I
be
think
insanely
the
good at
learning curve's at the
dodging.
beginning. The learning curve is at the beginning, and once you and it's really the and to get past that is that you just have to play it a few times, and then you kind of get a feel,
It's
and
more
then
of
you're
a
good to go.
knowledge game and a
Yeah.
trial by error game where you're learning as you go. You're learning how the systems work. And what I will say for my thoughts, for I think we spent $10 on it for
Yeah.
a an early access $10 game. This game is surprisingly deep with its systems.
Yeah.
Like this skill tree, the different guns, the genetics, the drone, the challenges, the map is huge.
Yeah.
Um, it is surprisingly deep for an early access game, and I cannot wait to see
Yeah.
what they add. This is a game that, as I hear about updates, I'm going to come back to and keep playing it
Yeah.
because I'm
This is one that
excited
I will
about the
come back
roadmap.
to.
Yeah,
This one, it feels like what they did is that they had a list of things of like, this is what I wanted in the game. And so they created one or two things that checked off the list. And then they're just going through, making sure it all works, making sure it's, as balanced as they can. And then from there they'll be able to expand upon the core, expand from the core things. Um and it just seems like, if they continue to just take their time and develop, in a, develop the different things out, then this can really become a uh pretty big game. And I mean, yeah, it was, I mean, I think the most impressive thing honestly is just the size of the map. Like I've put 25 hours in, and there were still areas that I hadn't found yet. And I mean, would part of me like it to be a little more clear where areas are? Sure, but that's me. um I kind of like I sometimes like a little assistance on just kind of knowing where to go. And maybe there are, more indicators out there that I'm just missing, because I mean there are the paths and stuff that kind of lead you to areas. And but I mean that's not any sort of gripe where I'm like, that's going to ruin the game because I don't know what I'm doing. And also because you don't really need to know where you're going in a lot of cases. But yeah, there's this is definitely one that has real good bones, that as long as they just add on you know things as they go and just continue to build it up, it's going to be insane
agreed.
what it can get to.
A lot of replayability. There are a few things that I think I would like to see added. One, it is a big map. but because finding the upgrades is so crucial, I would love an ability or a clue as in what section of the map to go searching in. Especially, I'm down to like
If you
two or
can
three
like,
things that I need to
because
find.
they give you like a little achievements,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that it'd be cool if maybe they had missions that you could technically track. And so on the map somewhere, there's a little indicator just saying like, hey, it's over here, and then you have to just kind of figure out how to get there.
It would be nice because the map's so big and because runs are very limited in how much space you could cover. Now that
Yeah,
I'm down to the last few things to find, I'm like, I don't even know where to begin to
yeah,
search
they
for this
need
thing.
they need to either,
Give me map
offer
markers. Can I leave a marker on the map to remember where that was? You know?
yeah, either map markers or um, just a way to ease travel, either by increasing the base movement speed so you can cover a little more ground, being able to fast travel between the different nodes somehow.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even if it's something that you have to unlock, like you unlock a speeder bike that could take you to another um, bu- 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 the landing point or
Drop
something
zone.
like that,
Mm-hmm.
where um so it's something that you have to take the time to get, but either that or just get rid of the time limit, where like after either expand the amount of time in between bosses, or um just get rid of that cap and like come up with maybe not like a curse mode, but some kind of uh
Buff the mobs
way to,
and let
just
it be like, okay, you can keep going, but every 5 minutes it's going to get harder and harder. And if you die now, you lose half of all the stuff all of your credits and all of your resources if you die without
yeah.
making it to a drop zone. Something like that. Allow me to continue the run instead
Or
of
that, yeah,
ending
that
it.
could be a thing where it's like at this point, like now it's after that fight, it's going to become overrun, and it's just going to increase difficulty. And instead of just ending and the drone takes your gun, you could escape. You have to escape back to a pod type of
Something.
thing. So then
Yeah.
you can stay on the map even though there aren't any more bosses, but there's eventually going to be a point where the game's going to outlevel you. And
Right. Right. The other two things I can think of that I really want to see improved. Look in games like this. I would love to see an on-screen DPS meter.
yes,
One,
just because I like seeing damage numbers.
yes, I like the
Um,
numbers, and so that way I really know what my build is doing at that time. Like you can feel it eventually, but it would be nice to see some numbers during a run. And the other
hmm
thing that I really want to see as part of the UI are buffs and debuffs. So there are a few things in the game. It's like, okay, the one that like the fire thing that makes you speed up for every little bit of experience you gain. You can eventually start to feel that, and it starts. They're like it starts to build up, but then it will drop off and all of that. I want to see on screen somewhere to see how many stacks of that buff I have. I want to see how many
hmm
stacks of all the buffs in the game,
yeah, because
and I
that's
want to
one
see
that
the
actually
debuffs.
yeah, that one says that you gain a stack of whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
um that increases your speed, and then things change. Yeah, it would be nice to just have a little pop up of like, oh, you're getting that temporary buff and now it's gone, kind of thing. And I'm wondering, yeah, part of me wonders either A, they just haven't decided to put it in yet, or they just did, with how insane these the runs can become with just
Even
how the
more
gun is. They're
reason
just like,
I want to
yeah,
see I want to see how many stacks I get of some of these things when my run is insane. I want to see, you know,
yeah,
I want to see
yeah. It'd be cool to
all of
have
that.
HUD options just to be like, just see what's going on,
Yeah.
and like understand what my DPS is and what I'm, you know,
Yeah. My suggestion is if what we have talked about or any of the videos have interested you at all, pick up this game because you're going to get easily, 25 to 30 hours out of just this version, and there's more to come. Like, go
Yep.
get it. Right now, the game, it doesn't have it. I mean, we talk about it lagging, but you have to really push the limits to get any
It's
lag.
lag.
It's
Yeah,
not
it's
buggy.
lagging. It's not the game. It's really, in a lot of ways, it's not the developer's fault. It's because we are. I mean, they do give you the ability to put together some incredibly sprite heavy setups, but I mean, it's there are setups that you can do that wouldn't be that insane either. So, um, and
There's no
yeah,
performance
it's
issues with this game. I think is the big point I'm
no,
getting at. Like, you're not gonna some early access games, even OutBrk, which I'm playing right now, has its level of jank, right? There is no
yeah,
jank in this game. You could sell me this game right now, and I would go, "This is a solid 4."
yeah, and especially yeah, with how much we've already how much it was only like what $10 something like that we yeah, this is definitely one of those ones that's like this was fine. Like I
What
only spent this much. Like
once you get over the learning curve,
yeah,
and you get a couple of successful runs in where you're getting to some of the later bosses, this game takes off quickly, and you're going to be in between play sessions. You're going to be going, what build can I do this time? Like, ooh, I really enjoyed that, but what if I did this barrel with this stock? You're going to be thinking about
hmm
those things, and for me, that is the sign that this is a good game, that this is a game that's going to keep you coming back. And that's why
yeah,
in this state in early access, it's an easy 4. And if they do some really good things with it, I could easily see it being a 4.5 or a 5
yeah,
down the line.
yeah. It's definitely a big contender. It's yeah,
It's a good game, y'all. It's a good game. Cool. Well, this has been a bit longer than the first episode, but hey, we're learning how to do this as we go. So we've now played 2 games. We have played Keeper's Toll, which is a top-down roguelite survival kind of thing. We've played, um, obviously,
Nimrods.
Nimrod's Guncraft
Didn't play
Survivor.
that dare Nimrods.
Nimrod.
Uh,
I believe, Spleen, you have our next suggestion.
yes, this one it it didn't quite break our rules, but cost wise, it was a little more of the pricier side of it. But we got ours on sale, but I believe it is still currently like $20. So it's on the high end. But it was one that I've been keeping my eye on for a while, and one and mainly because I was watching it mainly because it was during when you were doing a lot of your speed running of Mega Man. I was like, this is an interesting setup. I'm just going to keep an eye on it before I say anything because I want to make sure it doesn't suck. Um, but we are going to jump into, I guess it's called 30XX. It is the Mega Man roguelite that I'm not sure who makes it.
It's not an official Mega Man game,
It's
but
not
it's
officially
it's
a
a
Mega
Mega
Man, but
Man roguelike, but
it is a
roguelike.
Mega Man inspired one. It's by, let's see, Battery Staple Games.
Sure.
And they, I think I finally mentioned it once it went out of early access and they released their 1.0. And it's very much a Mega Man looking game. And then they just added a level of roguelike. Is it roguelite or roguelike? I don't. Is it?
Roguelike, right? Roguelite? I don't know. What is it?
Let's
We
see.
should
It's
know
a
this, right?
roguelike, and it even has multiplayer capabilities, so that could be an interesting aspect to bring into it. But yeah, it very much looks like they took a Mega Man game and added extra elements to it. I think we've both kind of jumped into it a few runs, and it has a very good feel. And I'm ready. I'm excited to see, like, just based on the little ad thing they have, like from let's see, they have 10 unique stages, like 18 main weapons, 2 core sets, whatever. I'm not sure what that means. You get pets, there's a bunch, and then like 65 augments. I don't know if that's just when they've gone to 1.0 that they've added that many, so I don't know if there's more. But and it looks like it even comes with the ability that you could make levels.
Yeah, there's a whole content creators like
So there's a yeah, and
community
it's
level thing. Yeah.
maintained a pretty positive review. It's very positive, but it's the numbers aren't super high. Um,
I have
but
played one run of it, and like Spleen said, I did somewhat casually run speedrun Mega Man X, and I will tell you, I hooked up my SNES controller, and I immediately was like, well, this feels just like Mega Man X. Like, I feel at home. So if anyone has played Mega Man X or any of the X games or
hmm
the Zero games, you're gonna feel comfy playing this
yeah,
game. But it is
yeah, that
quite a bit different than the first two games we've played, other than being a roguelike. That is the only
hmm
similarity, I would say.
yeah, and I think it's one of the pretty cool that right at the beginning you can play as the Mega Man or Zero character
Yeah,
depending on how whatever you want to do and how you want to play. And I haven't really settled on which one I liked more because I sometimes certain ones I like staying far away, but I also excelled more in Dead Cells, which was a lot more melee based. So um I just have to get into. I have to. I know I had to. I've been fussing with the controls a little bit just to get comfortable because there's like one extra button that kind of throws off my feel that I want it to be, and so I gotta play with that a little bit to get comfortable. But yeah, I'm
sure.
excited to play this one.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited. Well, guys, this was fun.
Yeah.
This is a good game. Good game. Um, so we'll give it about a month. Though in a month, Fenn's life should be considerably different.
Yeah. He will be. He will be a very tired dad.
Officially,
Yes.
is he still there?
No, he had to unfortunately leave
Uh,
due to
the vessel.
things.
Sure.
Yes.
That's okay. That's okay. Well, this was fun. Cool. Well, this is the Three Tired Dads podcast. Though we're just two tired dads right now. We're gonna play 30XX, and we'll talk to you guys in about a month. I am
Yep.
Sharks,
And I am Spleen.
and we'll catch you next time.
Later.